Imagine, for just a second, that you are standing in the middle of a massive retail store. You know the
Mhm.
kind. The fluorescent lights are just buzzing overhead, casting that really harsh, clinical glow over everything.
Oh, yeah, the classic big box store vibe.
Right, exactly. And you are staring down an aisle, and it is just completely packed with rows upon rows of seemingly identical products. It's uh, it's something totally mundane. Maybe it's toothpaste, maybe it's cereal,
Huh?
or I don't know, maybe it's a pair of jeans.
Something that shouldn't take more than a minute.
Exactly. You came to this building with a very simple mission, right? Grab the one item you need, walk to the cash register, pay, and get on with your life. But instead, you find yourself suddenly, well, paralyzed.
Totally frozen.
Yeah, you're picking up boxes, you're reading the microscopic print on the labels, comparing like fractional differences in features, and you're feeling this bizarre, creeping sense of dread over what is, objectively, a totally trivial purchase.
And that paralysis, I mean, that is practically the defining condition of modern consumer life right there.
It really is.
That creeping dread you're talking about, that's your cognitive bandwidth being stretched to its absolute limit, by an environment that just demands you make a high-stakes calculation out of a low-stakes task.
And that is exactly the core tension we're tackling today on this deep dive.
Mhm.
Because we have to ask a really bold question about how we have designed our lives and honestly our businesses too.
Right.
What if the ultimate symbol of modern freedom, this deeply ingrained idea that having limitless options at all times for absolutely everything is the pinnacle of success? What if that is actually the very thing building our psychological prison?
It's a profound paradox, honestly. I mean, it strikes right at the heart of our cultural operating system.
Yeah, because we just assume choice equals freedom.
Exactly. We are thoroughly conditioned to believe that freedom is intrinsically linked to choice. The logic seems pretty unassailable on the surface, right? If some choice is good, well, more choice must be better.
So infinite choice must be the ultimate freedom.
That's the assumption. But the premise of our discussion today is that at a certain identifiable threshold, choice completely stops liberating us. It actually tyrannizes us. It actively impairs our ability to function, and really, it just strips the joy right out of our lives.
Wow. So today's deep dive is exploring the prologue of Barry Schwartz's incredibly influential book, The Paradox of Choice, a roadmap.
A phenomenal text.
It really is. And we are going to unpack the mechanics of how our modern culture of abundance actually, robs us of satisfaction. And I want to say, for anyone listening who is building a business or designing a product funnel, or even just trying to manage their own personal productivity, understanding the architecture of this paradox is non-negotiable.
Oh, absolutely. It changes how you see everything.
Because the prevailing conventional wisdom in the marketplace dictates that continually flooding your customers or yourself with infinite options and customizable features is the only way to win. We assume endless permutations drive engagement.
Right, but Schwartz's thesis argues the exact opposite. Flooding the zone with options drives anxiety. It instigates decision paralysis, and it practically guarantees buyer's remorse.
Which is terrifying if you're trying to sell something.
Totally. The default assumption in product design and marketing is usually, to give the market every conceivable variation of a product. So we are going to deconstruct the hidden psychological and cognitive costs of that assumption today. We're looking at what actually happens in the human brain when it is forced to navigate a landscape of infinite alternatives.
And to really understand the mechanics of this, I think we need to look at a universally relatable scenario that Schwartz uses to open his book. It is the story of buying a pair of Gap jeans.
Yeah, the famous jeans story.
It sounds so trivial, but it operates as a perfect microcosm of, late-stage consumer abundance.
It really does.
So Schwartz describes himself as the kind of person who wears his jeans until they're basically structurally failing.
Right, falling apart at the
Hmm.
seams.
Exactly. He isn't a fashion aficionado.
Yeah.
He views clothing as a purely functional utility. So it had been a few years since his last purchase. He walks into a Gap store, a salesperson approaches him, and he gives a very straightforward directive. He says, "I want a pair of jeans, 3228.
Which used to be the end of the conversation.
Right. Historically, that sentence marked the end of the transaction. You provided your measurements, the clerk handed you the corresponding garment, you paid, and you left. It was a 5-minute logistical affair. It required zero emotional investment and zero cognitive fatigue.
And the historical context is really crucial here. I mean, in that era, the consumer was living in a world of default options.
Right. They were just jeans.
Exactly. There was essentially one kind of jeans. They were standard issue. The concept of filtering a core product through this crazy matrix of subcategories, well, it simply didn't exist for the average buyer.
But of course, that's not what happens to Schwartz. Instead of just handing him the pants, the salesperson introduces this wildly complex decision tree.
Oh, yeah, here we go.
She asks if he wants slim fit, easy fit, relaxed fit, baggy, or extra baggy.
Right.
Then she layers on the wash, right? Stone-washed, acid-washed, or distressed. Then the hardware button fly or zipper fly. Finally, the fade, faded, or regular.
It's exhausting just listening to it.
Right. Schwartz is entirely stunned by this barrage of variables. He actually sputters at the clerk, saying he just wants regular jeans. You know, the kind that used to be the only kind.
And we can really look at this interaction as a sudden, non-consensual escalation of cognitive load.
Oh, I like that phrase.
Right. Because a simple transaction has been violently transformed into a complex optimization problem.
And the narrative gets even more revealing from there. The salesperson eventually deciphers what regular used to mean and directs him to that specific style. But the damage is already done.
The seed of doubt is planted.
Exactly. Schwartz is now infected with doubt. With this entire menu of newly discovered options laid out in front of him, his confidence in his original desire just collapses. He's no longer sure that regular is actually the optimal choice.
Because what if it's not? What if there's something better?
Right. He starts wondering if an easy fit would be more comfortable, or if a relaxed fit would look better. He actually asks the salesperson to explain the nuances between the cuts, and she produces a literal diagram, like a schematic for denim, and it still doesn't clarify the decision.
A schematic for pants. That's where we are.
I know. So he realizes he has to physically take a pair of every single permutation into the dressing room. He tries them all on, one by one, and he finds himself scrutinizing his reflection in the mirror, agonizing over these microscopic differences.
Which is such a shift from just wanting to cover his legs.
Totally. He ultimately settles on the easy fit, but, and this is the kicker, he makes that choice solely because the phrase relaxed fit triggered an insecurity. It implied to him that he was getting soft in the middle and needed a garment designed to camouflage his aging body.
And that, right there, is the underlying mechanism. It's the shift from a logistical task to an identity referendum.
An identity referendum.
Yeah. I mean, when there was only one option, buying jeans was literally just about covering your legs.
Right.
But when there are dozens of highly specific options, the choice suddenly becomes a reflection of who you are, you know? How you perceive your body and how you want the world to perceive you.
Wow.
A completely mundane purchase suddenly demands that you confront your insecurities about aging and physical fitness. You are forced to invest time, energy, and a massive amount of self-doubt into a decision that yields virtually no meaningful return on that investment.
It's so true. And if you are, say, building a product, designing a user interface, or structuring a service, the takeaway here is glaring. Adding features, increasing variations, giving the user more dials to turn it does not automatically equate to a superior user experience.
Often, it actively degrades the experience.
Yes, if you force your user to work this hard to figure out what they want, they will subconsciously link your brand with anxiety and fatigue. Simplifying the decision path is a huge competitive advantage. I mean, look at the early days of the smartphone wars. You had Android manufacturers releasing dozens of models a year, with every conceivable screen size, keyboard configuration, and memory capacity. And then Apple released one iPhone.
Just the one.
You either bought the iPhone or you didn't.
Yeah.
They removed the anxiety of optimization, and that constraint was a massive part of their early dominance.
That's a great example.
But, you know, I do want to push back on the jeans example for a second, specifically regarding the functional outcome.
Okay, let's hear the counter-argument.
Well, if I am trying to find a movie on a streaming platform,
Yeah.
right, and I spend 45 minutes scrolling through thousands of thumbnails until my dinner is literally cold.
Yeah.
I understand the frustration there. That is a pure loss of time.
Sure.
But with the jeans, isn't the retailer actually providing a significant structural benefit to society? Because human bodies are incredibly diverse. We have different proportions, different styles, different physical needs. So by engineering all these specific permutations, isn't the store finally catering to the reality of human diversity?
That's a fair point.
Right. Getting a pair of jeans that actually conforms to your specific body type seems like an objective improvement over, wearing a generic, poorly fitting default option.
And Schwartz actually addresses that exact tension in the text, and it is a vital nuance to cover. He totally concedes that the proliferation of options does represent a genuine functional improvement.
Okay.
Before these tailored variations existed, a consumer with a non-standard body type simply had to tolerate an imperfect, uncomfortable fit. So the store's intent to serve a wider array of needs is fundamentally beneficial. On a purely mechanical level, the fit of the clothing across the population has improved.
Right, so the objective utility of the product went up. We should, in theory, be measuring a higher level of customer satisfaction.
We should be, but the paradox is that we aren't.
Why not?
The satisfaction doesn't scale with the utility. And the reason for this disconnect is the psychological tax levied on the consumer to acquire that perfect fit. Exactly. The cognitive drain, the anxiety of the fitting room, the second guessing, it all adds up to a tax that is so high, it basically bankrupts the joy of the improved functional outcome.
Oh, wow.
But more importantly, the proliferation of choice fundamentally alters the attribution of blame.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
Well, think about it. When you lived in a world with one standard pair of jeans and they fit you poorly, who is responsible for your discomfort?
Oh, it was the manufacturer's fault. It was the failure of the world to accommodate me. I was completely absolved of the bad fit.
Exactly. The burden was entirely external. Now, consider the modern environment. You have access to 50 different cuts, styles, and washes. The theoretical perfect pair of jeans for your specific body exists somewhere in that store.
Right.
So if you spend an hour trying on clothes, make a purchase, take them home, and later realize they pinch at the waist or sag in the back, who is responsible for that failure now?
Oh, man. I am.
Yeah.
Because the perfect option was available, and I lacked the competence or the stamina to find it. So the failure is entirely internal.
Yes. The really insidious nature of infinite choice is that it shifts the burden of responsibility entirely onto the individual.
That is so heavy.
It is. Every suboptimal outcome becomes a personal failure. You didn't do enough research, you didn't read enough reviews, you didn't try on enough options, and this internalizing of blame is what drives the persistent anxiety of the modern consumer. It marks the specific threshold where the trajectory of choice actually flips its polarity.
And that trajectory is not a straight linear progression, right?
Yeah.
Where more choice always equals more anxiety. It is a curve. We should probably map this out clearly for the listener.
Yeah, visualizing it as a bell curve is definitely the most accurate way to understand the phenomenon. So the far left side of the graph represents zero choice.
Right.
And we need to be unequivocal here. Having no choice is a miserable, oppressive condition.
For sure.
Schwartz is not advocating for a return to, a centralized authoritarian command economy where you wait in line for the single state-mandated brand of soap.
No one wants that.
Exactly. Moving from 0 choices to 2 or 3 choices generates a massive vertical leap in human well-being. It introduces autonomy. It allows for the expression of preference. Those initial choices are deeply liberating.
So the first few options fundamentally upgrade our existence. The problem isn't the existence of choice. The problem is the velocity and volume of choice as we move further right on the x-axis.
Right. Because as the number of available choices continues to compound, the rate of positive return begins to flatten out. The utility of adding a fourth option is way less than the utility of adding the second.
Makes sense.
Eventually, the curve reaches its apex. This is the point of maximum liberation. But, and this is the crux of the whole thing, as choices keep growing past that apex, the y-axis, which is our well-being and satisfaction, begins to plummet.
It just drops off.
It drops off because the negatives, like that cognitive tax we talked about and the burden of internal responsibility, they begin to outweigh the functional benefits. We enter the territory of choice overload.
And Schwartz scales this concept far beyond retail, which is fascinating. The jeans are just the entry point. He applies this curve to the most profound, identity-defining pillars of modern life.
Oh, everywhere.
We're facing choice overload in our education, analyzing hundreds of potential degree programs and micro-credentials. We face it in our career paths, where the concept of, a linear 30-year tenure at one company has been completely replaced by the expectation of constant pivoting and personal branding.
Constant reinvention.
Right. And it infects our friendships, our romantic lives via algorithmic dating apps, our parenting philosophies, and even our religious or spiritual observance.
Yeah.
The sheer volume of permutations in how to live a human life right now is historically unprecedented.
It really is. And this creates a severe cognitive dissonance, particularly in Western societies, and most acutely in the United States.
Because of our culture.
Yes. The cultural DNA of the U.S. is entirely built upon a foundation of individual freedom and self-determination. Over centuries, we have culturally fused the concept of liberty with the concept of choice. We treat them as perfectly synonymous.
Wow, yeah, we really do.
So to suggest that having 1,000 career paths or endless romantic options on a screen might actually be detrimental, well, it feels deeply subversive to people. It feels like an attack on the fundamental premise of a free society.
Right. And the practical application for the listener here is to start treating this choice curve as a diagnostic tool for your daily life.
Oh, that's a good way to frame it.
Yeah, like when you were standing at a crossroads, whether you were selecting a health insurance plan, deciding which marketing software to integrate into your business, or even choosing a neighborhood to live in, you have to pause and locate yourself on the curve.
Ask yourself where you are.
Exactly. Ask yourself a diagnostic question. Is the act of gathering more quotes, reading more reviews, and seeking out more alternatives actually increasing my leverage and control, or has it begun to debilitate my momentum? But I do have to challenge Schwartz's vocabulary here a little bit. He uses the word tyrannize. He states that at a certain point, choice tyrannizes us.
Yes, he uses that specific word very deliberately.
But it feels incredibly dramatic, doesn't it?
Well,
I mean, calling an excess of salad dressings or a bloated software feature set or even an abundance of college majors a tyranny, it sounds like the definition of a luxury problem. It sounds like someone complaining that their diamond shoes are too tight.
right, right. On the surface, brushing it off as a champagne problem is definitely the most common critique of this theory. But Schwartz defends the term tyrannize by pointing directly to the clinical psychological data.
Okay.
We aren't just talking about feeling a bit annoyed in a supermarket aisle or fatigued by a software interface. We are talking about measurable psychological impairment.
Really? Impairment?
Yes. The baseline requirement for a healthy, functioning human being is the ability to direct their own life. Autonomy isn't just nice to have, it is a fundamental requirement for psychological well-being. But when you are crushed beneath the sheer mass of infinite options, and you're terrified of the personal responsibility associated with making the wrong one, you lose the ability to confidently steer your life.
You just freeze.
You become paralyzed, you stagnate.
Because the fear of suboptimal outcomes completely freezes your decision-making apparatus.
Exactly. And clinging tenaciously to the desire to keep all options open, refusing to commit because a better option might materialize that contributes directly to chronic anxiety, persistent stress, and profound dissatisfaction.
Wow.
The book explores in later chapters how this constant state of optimized agonizing is actually a direct contributor to the rise in clinical depression.
That's intense.
So if an environmental condition actively impairs your well-being, paralyzes your autonomy, and prevents you from living a flourishing life, well, tyranny is not hyperbole. It is an accurate clinical descriptor of the environment.
It is a psychological tyranny, but it's built entirely out of seemingly positive options.
Exactly.
It's like the cage is made of open doors, but you are still trapped inside.
That's a perfect metaphor.
And this brings us to the philosophical architecture supporting Schwartz's argument. Because he doesn't just rely on consumer anecdotes and psychological studies, right? He roots this paradox in the deep philosophy of liberty.
He does. He introduces the work of Isaiah Berlin, who is one of the most distinguished political philosophers of the 20th century.
Okay.
And Berlin is famous for establishing a vital structural distinction between two different concepts of liberty. He categorized them as negative liberty and positive liberty.
Let's break down the mechanics of these two concepts, because understanding the difference is really the key to unlocking why modern freedom feels so exhausting. I was reading this section on Berlin, and it struck me that we have completely conflated these two distinct types of freedom in our daily lives.
Oh, absolutely.
We are culturally obsessed with freedom from, which Berlin calls negative liberty.
Right. Negative liberty is precisely that, freedom from external constraint. It is the absence of barriers. When you tear down restrictive legislation, when you dismantle rigid social hierarchies, or even on a personal level, when you quit a job to escape an oppressive boss, you are exercising and expanding your negative liberty.
You are removing the forces that dictate your action.
Yes.
And positive liberty operates on a completely different axis, right?
It does. Positive liberty is the freedom, too. It is not about the absence of constraints. It is about the presence of capability, direction, and purpose. It is the availability of meaningful opportunities to actually be the author of your own life. Positive liberty is realized when you have the internal direction and the external resources to make your life significant.
But the assumption is that these two always scale together.
Hmm.
Like if I get more negative liberty, if I remove more rules, I automatically gain more positive liberty.
That is the assumption, yeah. And in highly constrained environments, they actually do scale together.
How so?
Well, if you are living under an authoritarian regime or trapped in a highly rigid, predetermined social caste, you have a severe lack of negative liberty, right?
Right.
In that state, it is virtually impossible to attain positive liberty. You cannot author your life if someone else is holding the pen. So for centuries, the primary struggle of human progress was the fight to maximize negative liberty.
Which makes total sense. But the disconnect happens when we reach the modern era. We spent decades aggressively tearing down societal constraints. We dismantled the rigid default expectations about how we should live, what geographical locations we had to stay in, who we were supposed to marry, and what linear career paths we had to follow.
Right.
We achieved an unprecedented volume of freedom from. But simply shattering those rigid constraints didn't automatically grant us a meaningful life.
No, because the removal of a barrier does not automatically provide a compass.
Ooh, it's good. I think of it like a giant sandbox.
Okay, lay it on me.
So for generations, society existed within a sandbox built with incredibly high, rigid concrete walls. You couldn't get out. You were told exactly what kind of sandcastle to build, who you were allowed to build it with, and what specific tools you had to use.
Right, a total lack of negative liberty.
Exactly. So we fought over generations to tear down the walls of the sandbox.
Yeah.
And we won. The walls are completely
No,
gone.
he smashed them.
But the unintended consequence is that we are now standing in the middle of an infinite, featureless desert. We have absolute, unadulterated freedom from the walls. But because there are no boundaries, no default structures, and a billion possible directions to walk in, we have absolutely no idea how to build a castle anymore.
Right.
The sheer scale of the desert is paralyzing. We actually lost our positive liberty, our ability to confidently author our lives, because we achieved total, unregulated, negative liberty.
The desert metaphor captures the vertigo of the modern condition perfectly. Standing in an environment with infinite horizons and no structural constraints is inherently paralyzing.
It really is.
And to analyze the economics of this paralysis, Schwartz introduces the work of Amartya Sen, the Nobel Prize-winning economist and philosopher. Sen provides a framework for understanding why the infinite desert drains us so much. He warns against a cultural condition he calls being fetishistic about freedom of choice.
Choice fetishism. It's a brilliant term because it implies an irrational, almost religious devotion to the mere concept of having options, regardless of their actual utility.
Exactly. Sen argues that we need to stop blindly worshiping the existence of choice and start evaluating choices based on their functional role in our lives.
Okay.
As an economist, Sen looks at the allocation of scarce resources. And the most finite and critical resources a human being possesses are time and cognitive energy.
For sure.
The fetishization of choice assumes that adding more options to a system always adds value. Sen counters this by stating that the mere existence of a choice does not guarantee that it nourishes the chooser. In fact, a massive increase in choices among goods and services can actively impair our freedom.
Because navigating that expanded choice set requires an enormous expenditure of our scarce cognitive resources. We are spending our limited attention simply evaluating the options, which leaves us with no energy to actually enjoy the selection or pursue higher-level goals.
The opportunity cost of navigating abundance is staggering. The hours and the mental bandwidth you spend agonizing over the specs of a new laptop or, optimizing your airline miles or swiping through a dating app that is energy directly siphoned away from activities that actually generate positive liberty.
Like deepening a relationship or contributing to a community or engaging in deep, focused work.
Exactly. The choices are parasitically draining the energy you need for the things that actually count.
And the translation of Sen's economic theory into a practical strategy for the listener is to begin ruthlessly auditing the choices in your life based on their functional role.
Right.
Schwartz uses the example of health insurance. We have a system where you might be presented with 50 different highly complex, esoteric health insurance plans. The fetishistic view says, this is wonderful. You have the freedom to choose exactly what coverage you want.
The ultimate negative liberty.
Right. But ask yourself the functional question. Does spending 2 weeks deciphering deductibles, copays, and out-of-network percentages actually enhance your self-respect? Does it increase your participation in public life? Does it make you feel more autonomous and free?
Yep.
Spoiler alert, it doesn't.
No? Or does it hem you in with mind-numbing bureaucracy, confusion, and a lingering low-grade terror that you might bankrupt your family if you select the wrong tier? The existence of those 50 choices is actively hostile to your well-being. You have to identify the domains in your life where choice is an energy drain and aggressively cut those options out.
And recognizing that we need to actively eliminate choices brings us to the operational climax of the prologue. Schwartz is not just diagnosing the pathology of abundance, he is prescribing a treatment protocol.
Finally, some solutions.
Right. But the treatment requires a fundamental rewiring of how we interact with the world. He lays out 5 counterintuitive rules for satisfaction, and he acknowledges immediately that these rules run completely contrary to conventional American wisdom. They violate everything we are taught in business school about optimizing outcomes and everything we are taught in self-help culture about refusing to settle.
These rules are a survival guide for the infinite desert.
Okay, let's go through.
The first rule is that we would be significantly better off if we embraced certain voluntary constraints on our freedom of choice instead of instinctively rebelling against any limitation.
And this connects directly back to the sandbox. Since society, the market, and technology are no longer building walls for us, we have to become the architects of our own constraints. We have to artificially limit our negative liberty to protect our cognitive bandwidth. This looks like setting non-negotiable arbitrary boundaries.
Yeah.
You decide, I only buy my groceries at this specific local market, and I completely ignore the giant superstore down the street. Or, when buying a company vehicle, I will only consider these 2 specific models from this one manufacturer. You deliberately, artificially constrain the search space.
You are intentionally reducing the denominator of your decisions. By refusing to engage with the infinite options outside your voluntary constraints, you preserve the energy required to actually execute a decision.
Right.
But, building those walls is only the first step. Once you have constrained the arena, you have to fundamentally change the algorithm you use to evaluate the options that remain inside it. That is the second rule. We would be better off seeking what is good enough instead of relentlessly seeking the absolute best.
Oh man, this is where my entrepreneurial instincts immediately rebel.
I know.
The phrase good enough sounds like a concession. It sounds like mediocrity. In business, you are taught to be an optimizer. You're supposed to seek the absolute highest ROI on every tool, every hire, and every strategy. If I settle for a software platform that is just good enough, while my competitor spends the time to find the absolute best, most optimized platform, doesn't the market eventually punish my complacency?
That is the standard pushback. It really is. To dismantle it, we need to examine 2 critical behavioral profiles that Schwartz borrows from psychology and economics: the maximizer and the satisficer.
Okay, break down the operating systems of these 2 profiles.
So a maximizer is an individual who is driven by the absolute necessity of making the optimal choice. Their goal is the absolute pinnacle of the utility curve. But there is a fatal flaw in the maximizing algorithm. To confidently know that you have selected the absolute best option, you must systematically evaluate every single alternative available.
Oh, I see where this is going.
You cannot prove you have the best until you have analyzed the rest.
Which, in an environment of infinite choice, is mathematically impossible.
Right.
You cannot physically demo every CRM software on the market. You cannot read every review for every pair of headphones.
Exactly. The environment ensures that the maximizer will always fail. Because they cannot evaluate the infinite, they are perpetually haunted by the alternatives they didn't have the time to investigate. They suffer from acute FOMO, fear of missing out, because the unexamined options might hold the theoretical perfection they seek.
And the satisficer?
The satisficer operates on a completely different metric. A satisficer does not care about the abstract concept of the best. A satisficer defines their specific criteria and their required standards before they begin the search.
Okay.
As soon as they encounter an option that meets or exceeds those predefined standards, they select it and they immediately terminate the search.
They declare victory as soon as their criteria are met. They settle for good enough.
They do. And Schwartz highlights a deeply revealing linguistic bias we have against this concept. He asks the reader to imagine a parent saying, "I want only the good enough for my kids."
Oof. It sounds horrifying. It sounds like you are actively failing your children.
Yeah.
It feels like a moral abdication.
It violates our cultural conditioning so deeply. But Schwartz's argument is that psychologically and practically, satisficing is an absolute requirement for survival. Attempting to maximize when the variables approach infinity is a guaranteed formula for regret, exhaustion, and paralysis.
Wow.
Satisficing is the only viable strategy. And it is really crucial to understand that satisficing does not mean lowering your standards to zero. It doesn't mean accepting garbage.
Right. That's an important distinction.
It means setting a rigorously high standard, successfully meeting that standard, and then reclaiming your most valuable asset, your time.
It reframes good enough from a lazy concession into a highly disciplined act of efficiency. You aren't settling. You are refusing to waste cognitive capital on marginal, imperceptible gains.
Perfectly said.
And once you adopt that satisficing mindset, it naturally feeds into the third rule. We would be better off if we systematically lowered our expectations about the results of our decisions.
Because the architecture of abundance creates a dangerous inflation of expectations.
How so?
When you are choosing between two options, you intuitively understand that neither will be perfect. You accept a certain level of friction. But when you are presented with 10,000 options, your brain makes a subconscious calculation. With this much variety, one of these must be absolute perfection.
Ah, yes. The myth of the perfect choice.
The sheer volume of choice creates the expectation of a flawless outcome. When you inevitably select an option that has flaws, because everything in reality has flaws, the delta between your expectation of perfection and the reality of the experience creates massive disappointment.
Right.
By consciously lowering your expectations to anticipate a good outcome rather than a perfect one, you insulate yourself from that disappointment.
You engineer your own satisfaction by controlling the baseline. Which brings us to the fourth rule. And honestly, this is the one that causes the most friction for me, because it goes against every instinct of risk mitigation I have.
Let's hear it.
Schwartz argues, we would be better off if the decisions we made were non-reversible.
He is advocating for burning the boats.
But the entire modern economy is built on reversibility. We demand 30-day money-back guarantees. We want month-to-month contracts so we can cancel anytime. We write exit clauses into absolutely everything. The ability to back out of a decision is universally considered a consumer protection and a strategic advantage. Why would locking ourselves into a non-reversible decision make us happier?
To understand this, we have to look at the mechanics of cognitive load and the human psychological immune system. I know you had a great way of visualizing this earlier.
Yes, thinking about this in terms of computing power makes the mechanism really clear for me. Think of your brain's cognitive bandwidth like the RAM in a computer. When you make a decision but you leave a 30-day return window open when the decision is reversible, that choice does not get filed away.
It's still active.
It stays active. It continues to run as a background application in your mind. Every time you use the product or experience a minor friction point with the service, your brain boots up the evaluation process again. Is this really the right fit? Should I box it up and send it back? I have 2 weeks left to cancel the subscription. What if that other vendor is better?
Right. Constantly monitoring.
That open loop is constantly eating up 5% or 10% of your processing power. You are perpetually spending mental energy relitigating a decision you theoretically already made.
The open door is an engine for chronic agonizing.
But when you burn the receipt, when you sign a binding multi-year contract, or when you explicitly commit to a choice with no escape hatch, you force quit that background application. The decision is final. You instantly get your RAM back. The cognitive load drops to zero.
And when that background processing stops, a profound biological mechanism takes over. Psychologists refer to it as our psychological immune system.
The psychological immune system.
Yeah.
I love that.
When a decision is absolute and non-reversible, your brain immediately stops calculating alternatives. The what-ifs are terminated because they are no longer functionally relevant. Instead, your brain shifts its processing power toward rationalizing and validating the choice you are now stuck with.
It defends the choice.
Exactly. You begin to instinctively highlight the positive attributes of the product, the situation, or the partner, and you naturally downplay the flaws. You adapt to the reality of the choice and generate your own satisfaction. But this psychological immune system cannot activate if you keep one foot out the door. Reversibility prevents adaptation.
That is such a powerful counter-narrative. The freedom to change your mind is actually the very thing preventing you from being happy with your mind's decision. We have to start closing the loops.
Close the loops.
And that leads to the fifth and final rule, which addresses the external environment. We would be better off if we paid less attention to what others around us were doing.
The toxicity of the comparison trap.
Exactly. Let's trace a successful implementation of the first 4 rules. You need a new laptop for work. You establish a voluntary constraint. You will only look at 2 specific brands. You define your criteria for good enough. It needs 16 gigabytes of RAM and a specific processor. You satisfies by buying the first model that meets those specs. You make the decision non-reversible by throwing away the receipt and the packaging. You're perfectly content. The machine runs your software, your expectations are met, the loop is closed. You're experiencing positive liberty.
A total success story.
Right, but then you go to a coffee shop or you sit on an airplane and the person next to you pulls out a laptop from a brand you didn't consider. It is half an inch thinner, the bezel is slightly smaller, the screen is marginally brighter.
Oh no.
In that singular moment of observation, your carefully curated, constrained choice set has been violently expanded without your consent. The infinite alternatives have intruded back into your reality.
And the satisfaction you engineered completely evaporates.
Completely.
In a landscape of infinite choice and infinite permutations, it is a statistical certainty that someone, somewhere, has found a combination of variables that appears marginally superior to yours.
It's guaranteed.
So if you index your satisfaction to social comparison, you are guaranteeing your own misery. The only defense mechanism is to put blinders on. Once a decision is made and it fulfills its functional requirement, you must actively refuse to evaluate the choices made by your peers, your competitors, or the market at large.
Applying these 5 rules isn't just a philosophical exercise. It is like downloading a critical patch for your cognitive operating system. If you want to survive the modern market, you have to implement these protocols. The next time you are sourcing enterprise software for your company, or trying to optimize a marketing funnel, or frankly just trying to figure out where to order takeout on a Friday night, build the sandbox walls. Define the precise criteria that constitute a good enough outcome. Pull the trigger on the first option that clears that bar. Burn the boats so you can't reverse the decision, and put the blinders on so you stop agonizing over what the competition is doing.
Implementing that framework is how you reclaim your autonomy. You stop being a passive consumer battered by infinite options, and you become the active author of your own bandwidth.
This brings us to the ultimate synthesis of this deep dive into Schwartz's prologue. We've traced the anxiety from the dressing room of the Gap, unpacked the tension between negative and positive liberty with Isaiah Berlin, analyzed the cognitive economics of Amartya Sen, and outlined a highly counterintuitive survival guide. What is this singular defining insight that represents the soul of this chapter?
The soul of the argument is the realization that true freedom is not located in an endless aisle of identical products. Equating human liberty directly with the sheer, unadulterated volume of choices available to you is a cultural trap that leads directly to paralysis.
We maximize the utility of our freedom not by demanding infinite choices in every direction, but by learning to make excellent, decisive, and satisfying choices about the very few things that actually dictate the trajectory of our lives, our deep relationships, our core ethical values, and our most meaningful work. And to preserve the energy required for those monumental choices, we must happily, intentionally, and ruthlessly unburden ourselves from agonizing over the thousands of trivial things that simply do not matter. We have to learn to let go of the genes.
That is the roadmap.
Yeah.
That is the architecture for surviving and actually thriving within the paradox of choice.
It requires a fundamental shift in how we perceive the world and our place in it. Next time on the deep dive, we're going to transition from this high-level philosophical architecture directly into the muddy reality of human behavior.
Oh, this is going to be fun.
We are going to take a trip to the local supermarket, walk down the condiment aisle, and look at the famous JAM study to see the exact empirical data on how choice overload ambushes our brains and destroys conversion rates.
We are moving from the theory of tyranny to the measurable data of consumer paralysis.
But before we get there, I want to leave you with a provocative thought to mull over today as you navigate your own environment. Look closely at the architecture of your life, your business, and your daily routines. Which specific freedom of choice are you currently fighting to keep open that is actually acting as a parasite on your time, your energy, and your peace of mind? If you could snap your fingers right now and make one recurring, exhausting decision completely non-reversible, how much mental space would you instantly get back?
Picture this, all right? It is a Tuesday evening.
The worst time to go anywhere.
Literally the absolute worst. You have just finished a long, completely grueling day at work.
Right.
Your brain feels like it has been running a marathon, and your stomach is starting to make those, those unmistakable hollow rumbling noises.
Yeah, that 6 p.m. crash.
Exactly. You aren't looking for a 5-course culinary experience. You just want a quick snack to tide you over until dinner.
Just something easy.
Right. So you pull into the parking lot of your local, seemingly modest neighborhood supermarket.
Okay.
You walk through the automatic sliding doors, you grab a handbasket, and you stroll down aisle 4, expecting a totally simple, frictionless transaction.
Which is never how it actually goes, is it?
No, of course not, because instead of grabbing a snack and heading straight to the register, you are brought to a dead, sudden halt.
Uh-oh.
You are standing in front of a wall of crackers.
A literal wall.
A wall. And out of sheer disbelief, you actually start counting them. There are 85 different varieties and brands of crackers.
That is just wild.
85. And right next to them, 285 varieties of cookies.
285.
Yeah, so you shake your head and think to yourself, okay, let's keep it simple. I'll just get chocolate chip.
Right, the classic. Can't go wrong.
But wait, because there are 21 different options for chocolate chip cookies alone.
Of course there are.
Some are chewy, some are crispy, some have dark chocolate chunks, some are imported, some are fat-free, bite-sized, made with alternative flours. It just goes on.
It is entirely overwhelming.
You are just standing there, holding an empty basket, staring at 21 variations of baked dough.
Yeah.
So the question for you today is this. Does having to choose between 21 different types of chocolate chip cookies make you more free, or does it just make you utterly exhausted? Okay, let's unpack this.
I mean, it is the perfect question to anchor us because it sits at the absolute center of the source material we are diving into today.
Right.
We are exploring the foundational concepts of Barry Schwartz's work here, specifically focusing on the explosion of consumer choice and how it fundamentally alters the human experience.
Yeah.
So in a couple of sentences, what you are about to learn is how the explosion of consumer choice, from trivial supermarket aisles to massive life decisions, was supposed to maximize our personal freedom, right?
No, the promise, yeah.
Exactly. But instead, it is paralyzing us.
Yeah.
It is draining our daily satisfaction.
Yeah.
And for anyone listening who is interested in business or entrepreneurship, this is vital because bombarding your customers with endless options might actually be the exact thing killing your sales.
Which is so counterintuitive.
Completely.
So we are looking at this paradox of choice specifically through the lens of shopping and consumption today in this deep dive. And I think starting in the grocery store is brilliant.
It really is.
Because it is the most universal baseline for human decision-making, right? We all have to eat. We all have to navigate these spaces.
Everyone has been in that aisle.
Yeah. And the numbers you see in the source material, they are just staggering. A typical modern supermarket carries over 30,000 distinct items.
30,000. Just wrap your head around that.
30,000. And to keep the shelves looking, fresh and innovative, more than 20,000 new products hit those shelves every single year.
Wow.
Most of which, by the way, are doomed to absolute failure within months.
Oh, absolutely. The graveyard of consumer products is massive.
Let's just map out the absurdity of the variety competing for your attention on a basic grocery run.
Please do.
Aside from the 285 cookies and the 85 crackers, you've got 95 different savory snack options.
Right.
You've got 61 types of suntan oil, 360 different hair products,
360.
175 salad dressings, 275 different boxes of cereal.
When you lay the numbers out sequentially like that, it sounds less like a grocery store and more like an unmanageable warehouse inventory.
Yeah, it sounds like a logistics nightmare.
It is. And the psychological category that these specific items fall into is crucial to understand here.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, economists refer to these as non-durable goods.
Non-durable, like things you use up.
Exactly. These are consumer items that are used up relatively quickly and replenished frequently. The soap, the cereal, the salad dressing.
Right.
Because they are relatively inexpensive, the financial stakes of making a quote-unquote wrong choice are incredibly low.
Yeah, if you buy a bad model ranch, you're out, what, $3?
Right. $3 or $4. The emotional stage should technically be zero.
Should be.
Should be. However, the cognitive load, the actual biological brain power required to navigate this space, is astronomically high if you attempt to be a rational, careful shopper.
Because to be a rational shopper, you can't just look at the price tag, right? You have to run a massive multivariable equation in your head for every single item.
Precisely. Think about what genuine comparison shopping actually demands in that aisle.
Right.
You aren't just looking at the retail price. You have to cross-reference the price with the unit price, the cost per ounce.
Oh yeah, always check the cost per ounce.
Then you have to factor in the flavor profile, the expiration date, the saturated fat content,
There's sodium levels.
the sodium, the calorie count, the portion size, the artificial dyes.
It is exhausting just listing them.
To genuinely perform that level of computation for just one item, like finding the objectively best box of crackers out of 85 options
Right.
that could easily consume an hour of your day and a massive amount of mental energy.
Which is a completely unsustainable way to live.
Totally unsustainable.
Nobody has the time or the mental bandwidth to run a complex spreadsheet algorithm in their head just to buy saltines. So how do we actually survive this supermarket battlefield? Because people clearly still buy groceries.
We do?
We do it through blind habit. It is a literal evolutionary survival mechanism adapted for the retail environment.
That is exactly what it is, a defense mechanism.
The source material notes that consumers tend to just return to the exact same products they usually buy, to the point where they don't even notice 75% of the items competing for their attention.
75%. Just invisible to them.
They effectively put on psychological blinders. They walk down that aisle, completely ignoring 3/4 of the products that massive companies spent millions of dollars researching, developing, packaging, and marketing.
It is remarkable. The human brain simply refuses to process the excess information.
Yeah.
And if we look at the practical takeaway here for the entrepreneurs and business owners listening, this is a massive reality check.
Absolutely.
If you are launching a new consumer product, let's say you've formulated the greatest, healthiest, most delicious new snack cracker on the market.
Okay, my artisanal crackers.
Right. You often assume your biggest hurdle is just distribution. You think, if I can just get my product onto the supermarket shelf, it will sell itself.
Right, because it's better.
But the behavioral data shows that getting on the shelf is just the absolute bare minimum.
Yeah.
You are fighting against a deeply entrenched choice fatigue. Your potential customers are defaulting to habit precisely because the store environment is so overwhelming.
They are actively trying not to see your new product.
Exactly. Noticing your product requires them to break their routine and make a new decision. And making a decision requires energy they simply do not have at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday.
That reframes the whole challenge of marketing.
It really does.
Your customer isn't ignoring you because your branding is bad or your font is ugly. I mean, maybe it is, but they are mostly ignoring you to protect their own sanity.
They literally cannot afford to see you.
That is wild. But, okay, let's step out of the supermarket environment.
Let's do it.
Let's raise the stakes. Because the source material doesn't just stop at non-durable $4 goods. It moves us down the street to the consumer electronics store.
Ah, yes. The durable goods.
Here, the numbers are equally wild, but the context of the purchase is totally different.
A completely different game.
The text highlights a standard electronics retailer. So they're carrying 45 different car stereo systems,
Okay.
42 different home computers, 110 different televisions.
110.
Yeah, varying high-definition capabilities, flat screens, diagonal sizes, refresh rates, all that.
Right.
And when you look at home stereo components, so mixing and matching tuners, CD players, amplifiers, receivers, and speakers, the math yields roughly 6,512,000 different possible stereo systems you could build.
6.5 million combinations.
Now, hold on. I have to argue the other side of this for a second.
Let's go for it.
I am a bit of a tech guy. I like tweaking my gear. Isn't a custom stereo system a good thing? Like, if I have 6.5 million combinations, it means I am not stuck with some generic factory preset box.
Right.
I can choose the exact amplifier to match the exact impedance of my speakers. I can tweak the aesthetic, the footprint, the entire acoustic profile to perfectly match the dimensions of my living room.
Sure.
I get exactly what I want. So why is this level of modular freedom painted as a negative, paralyzing force? Isn't this the ultimate victory of a free market?
What's fascinating here is that you're making a very strong argument, and it is the exact logic the consumer electronics industry relies on to sell these components.
Right. They market it as a feature.
Exactly. And for a dedicated hobbyist or a prosumer who genuinely enjoys the research phase, that level of granular control can be a source of pleasure.
Yeah, I enjoy watching the YouTube reviews.
But we have to look at the massive psychological shift that occurs for the average consumer when we move from non-durable goods to durable goods.
Okay, break down durable goods for me.
We are no longer talking about a box of cereal. These are high-ticket items costing hundreds or thousands of dollars, meant to last for years, if not decades.
Right.
The stakes have fundamentally changed.
Yeah, a bad stereo hurts a lot more than a bad box of Ritz.
Exactly. If you make a mistake in your configuration, say you buy an underpowered receiver for those high-end speakers, the consequences are severe and lasting.
Yeah.
You either have to live with a $2,000 sonic disappointment in your living room every single day, constantly reminding you of your failure to choose correctly,
That sounds awful.
or you have to go through the immense, agonizing hassle of boxing it all back up.
Oh, finding the styrofoam inserts.
Finding the styrofoam, locating the receipts, lugging heavy boxes back to the store, dealing with the return desk, and then starting the entire agonizing decision process all over again.
That is a brutal scenario. And unlike the grocery store, you can't just fall back on the survival mechanism of habit, can you?
No, you can't.
Because with the crackers, I can just buy the Ritz because I bought Ritz last week. And they haven't fundamentally changed the physics of a Ritz cracker since like the 1930s.
That is the crucial difference right there.
Yeah.
The technology in durable goods changes so rapidly that your past habits and previous brand loyalties are often entirely useless.
Oh, true.
The model of television or the stereo receiver you bought 5 years ago simply doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
The underlying terminology has changed. The connectivity standards have changed. We go from RCA cables to HDMI to wireless protocols. The essential features have been completely overhauled.
It's like learning a new language every 5 years.
Exactly. So when you walk into that electronics store, you are a novice all over again. You are forced to engage in that high cognitive load comparison shopping. But this time, you can't just shrug off a mistake.
You are doing it with real financial risk hanging over your head.
Yes.
So if I am a business owner selling high-ticket, durable items, what is the practical takeaway here?
Well, it means you have to fundamentally rethink the value of customization.
Right.
When you offer millions of configurations, you might tell yourself you are empowering the buyer, but what you're actually doing is transferring the entirety of the anxiety of getting it right directly onto their shoulders.
Transferring the anxiety, that's a great way to put it.
You are essentially saying, here is a massive pile of highly technical parts. Good luck not messing this up.
Wow, yeah.
For businesses selling complex or high-ticket items, offering structured tiers, clearly defined use cases, or expertly curated bundles is almost always a much more successful strategy.
Give me the good, better, best packages.
Exactly. You have to absorb a significant portion of that decision-making burden for the customer. You have to act as the expert guide rather than just drowning them in endless modular freedom and expecting them to navigate it themselves.
That is such a vivid way to capture that familiar feeling. Like standing in the middle of a big box store, sweating under the fluorescent lights, trying to read the tiny font on the back of a receiver box.
We've all been there.
But these physical retail stores are really just the tip of the iceberg, aren't they?
Oh, they are just the beginning.
Because the source material introduces this brilliant concept of the mail order virus, which is essentially the physical precursor to modern algorithmic e-commerce.
Yes.
It talks about the phenomenon of receiving 20 different catalogs in the mail every week, and it operates exactly like a virus. You buy one seemingly innocent item, your name gets added to a mailing list, and suddenly your mailbox is infected with infinite permutations of consumer goods.
A literal virus.
The text looks at just one single summer catalog for women's clothing.
Just one catalog.
One catalog. It features 19 distinct styles of t-shirts, each available in 8 different colors.
Okay.
Dozens of varying blouses. And the bathing suits, the bathing suits are a mathematical nightmare.
Oh, the mix and match.
7 different styles of tops, 5 different styles of bottoms, each available in 5 different colors. That creates 875 different make-your-own two-piece combinations within the pages of a single seasonal catalog.
This specific explosion of permutations allows us to introduce a highly relevant concept from the economist Fred Hirsch.
Okay, what did you call it?
He termed it the tyranny of small decisions.
The tyranny of small decisions. I am fascinated by that phrasing. It implies a kind of creeping oppression.
It does, doesn't it?
But how does it actually work in practice? If I'm just flipping through a catalog on my couch, where is the tyranny?
The tyranny lies in the accumulation of micro-commitments.
Micro-commitments.
Hirsch pointed out that we almost never sit down and consciously vote for the whole overwhelming package of evaluation.
Right.
You don't sit on your couch and explicitly say to yourself, I'm going to spend the next 4 hours rigorously evaluating 875 distinct bathing suit combinations.
No, if someone presented that task to you up front, you would refuse. It sounds like a punishment.
Exactly. Instead, the process begins with a series of microscopic, seemingly harmless choices.
Ah, I see. It's like taking a wrong turn in a massive, sprawling suburban neighborhood.
Oh, I like that analogy.
You don't realize you're hopelessly lost right away because every single street looks pleasantly familiar. It's just another row of houses.
Right, you think you can just loop back around.
Yeah, you make one little left turn, then a right turn to try and correct it, then another left. By the time you realize you are miles away from the main road and completely out of gas, you're exhausted. Every page of that catalog, every click on a website is just another slight turn into a cul-de-sac.
That is a phenomenal analogy.
Yeah.
The mechanism is identical. You make the small decision, let's just look at one more catalog.
Let's just click to page 2.
Right. Or let's just apply one more color filter to this search query. Each individual decision requires almost zero effort and seems completely low stakes.
Yeah.
But cumulatively, step by step, they add up to a massive unexpected expenditure of time and emotional energy.
Wow.
You slide into the overwhelming complexity without ever formally agreeing to it.
You're just suddenly in it.
By the time you actually reach the point of making a purchase, or more likely giving up entirely in frustration, your cognitive resources are completely depleted.
So the practical takeaway here for a listener, whether they're the one doing the shopping or the one designing the storefront, is about recognizing the trap of incremental investment.
Yes.
If you are the consumer, you have to establish a hard boundary before you enter the environment. You have to tell yourself, I will look at exactly 3 brands, I will evaluate them, and I will choose the best among those 3, period.
No, page 2.
No page 2, no extra catalogs. And for the entrepreneur, the warning is flashing red. Do not overwhelm your potential buyers with endless color, style, and feature matrices.
Exactly.
Offering a basic t-shirt in 50 slightly different shades of blue doesn't make you a premium brand. It makes interacting with your business a grueling chore.
It creates a deep sense of decision fatigue before the customer has even managed to put the item in their digital cart.
Right.
They associate your brand with exhaustion.
Which is the last thing you want.
Exactly. And what is truly vital to understand about the source material is that this phenomenon of choice overload isn't just contained to the realm of retail therapy or buying clothes.
Oh no, it goes much deeper.
It has actively seeped into the most fundamental formative institutions of our society.
Yeah.
The text transitions our focus from the literal shopping mall to what it provocatively calls the intellectual shopping mall.
The intellectual shopping mall.
Specifically, the modern commodification of higher education.
Now, this section of the text completely shifted my perspective.
Really?
Yeah, because we can easily see how infinite choice ruins a trip to buy jeans, right? But what happens when we apply this exact same consumer choice mentality to something profound, like shaping a young adult's mind?
Is a massive shift.
The source contrasts the historical model of a university education with the modern reality. A century ago, a college curriculum was largely fixed and predetermined.
Yeah.
You went to a university to be educated within a specific ethical, civic, and academic tradition. It wasn't just about accumulating credits to get a piece of paper for a job.
It was a cohesive program.
Exactly. It was about raising citizens with a common set of values and a shared baseline of knowledge. Everyone took a core set of courses. You had a shared foundation with your peers.
Yes.
But now, it has become a total free-for-all.
A buffet.
The text notes that Harvard offers 220 distinct courses just to satisfy its core curriculum requirements.
220 courses for the core.
Penn State offers over 40 different majors just for liberal arts students. It has transformed from a guided journey into an intellectual buffet line.
The language used to describe this shift is very deliberate and revealing. The perspective of the university has changed.
How so?
They increasingly view their students less as pupils to be molded and more as customers to be satisfied.
Oh.
And their goal is to provide whatever bundles of fragmented knowledge those customers happen to demand in the marketplace.
The analogy drawn in the text is so sharp, it's almost uncomfortable. It compares modern college students explicitly to mall browsers.
Yes, the mall browsers.
Literally, it describes how students during the first few weeks of a semester will walk into a lecture hall, sit down for 10 minutes, and if they aren't instantly entertained, captivated, or convinced of the immediate utility of the class,
They leave.
they will simply stand up pack their bags, and walk out right in the middle of a professor's sentence to go shop for another class down the hall.
It is the ultimate manifestation of the consumer mindset.
Show me what you've got to offer me in 10 minutes, or I'm taking my tuition dollars elsewhere.
When we pull back and look at the broader sociological implications of this shift, we have to acknowledge the massive societal trade-off being made.
Okay, let's look at the trade-off.
Because it is important to be objective here. Eliminating the highly rigid, fixed curriculum of the past was, in many ways, a necessary evolution. The old systems were often incredibly myopic. They frequently excluded diverse perspectives, non-Western traditions, and marginalized voices.
Right. They were very limited in scope.
So the modern, expansive system brilliantly tailors to individual tastes and allows students to pursue highly idiosyncratic, specialized interests.
Right. If you want to study the intersection of 14th century agriculture and modern poetry, you can probably find a way to do it.
Exactly. But the hidden cost of this freedom is profound.
Because it assumes the 18-year-old actually knows what is best for their long-term intellectual development.
Exactly. It forces young adults to make incredibly complex, lifelong decisions about their intellectual trajectory at an age when they fundamentally lack the life experience, the foresight, and the historical context to make those choices intelligently.
They don't know what they don't know.
They don't. They are essentially guessing at what their future selves, 20 years down the line, will have needed to learn.
It is the stereo system problem all over again, but with infinitely higher stakes.
That's a great way to frame it.
It's like asking a teenager to perfectly configure that 6 million combination audio setup. But the stereo system is their entire career, their worldview, and their earning potential.
Yes.
We're handing them a massive catalog of discrete parts and saying, build a functioning adult mind. Good luck.
That is a terrifying amount of pressure to place on a student.
Yeah.
And the second major casualty of this shift is the fundamental erosion of shared intellectual experience.
The shared experience, yeah.
When an institution offers 220 different options just to fulfill a basic core requirement, what are the mathematical odds that two random students bumping into each other in the quad will have read the same foundational book?
Almost zero.
Or debated the same historical event, or wrestled with the same philosophical concept. A functioning society relies on a certain baseline of shared cultural and intellectual understanding to communicate effectively.
And we're losing that.
We are. The total fragmented individualization of education fractures that common ground.
So if we take this out of the ivory tower and apply it to the business world, say, for entrepreneurs listening who are providing complex services, coaching, or consulting, the practical takeaway is incredibly clear.
What is it?
Total, unbridled freedom of choice in a service-based product can actually leave your customer feeling utterly adrift and abandoned.
Oh, absolutely.
If someone hires you as an expert, they aren't paying you just to give them access to a massive library of raw information.
Right, they could Google that.
They are paying you for your guidance, your structure, and your opinionated curriculum. They want you to tell them what matters.
Yes.
Curation and confident direction are often vastly more valuable than infinite customization.
That is a vital insight. The customer is outsourcing the cognitive burden of structuring the path to you.
Right.
If you just hand the burden right back to them in the form of endless options, you have failed to provide the core value of your service.
You failed them.
And this loss of the shared experience, this fracturing of common ground that we see in universities, doesn't stop there.
Where else does it go?
It heavily dominates how we spend our leisure time as well.
Oh, television.
The source material outlines the rapid evolution of entertainment media. It reminds us of an era not that long ago when American television viewers had basically 3 major networks to choose from.
Right. ABC, NBC, CBS.
Then came the advent of cable television, offering a few dozen stations, then the expansion to 200-plus channels.
And now, of course, we exist in the era of DVR, TiVo, and an absolutely infinite sea of on-demand algorithmic programming.
Infinite.
We have transitioned from a world where we all gathered around the television at 8 p.m. on a Thursday to watch the same sitcom, to a world where I am watching a hyper-niche documentary on my tablet while my partner watches a completely different, algorithmically suggested drama on the television in the same room.
The underlying technological shift here is fundamentally about the transfer of control.
Control.
We no longer have to schedule our lives or our evenings around the TV guide.
Thank goodness.
We don't have to sit patiently through commercials or sit through lead-in programs we don't care about or tolerate shows we only sort of like while waiting for the one we actually want to see.
Right.
We can actively, ruthlessly edit out anything we find mildly annoying or uninteresting. In effect, every single one of us has been given the tools to become the programming director of our own highly personalized television network.
Which on paper sounds like an absolute utopia.
It sounds great.
Pure, unadulterated entertainment, tailored exactly to my specific tastes, available exactly when I want it, no friction, no waiting. But clearly, based on the trajectory of this conversation, there is a severe sociological cost to this level of control.
There is. The cost is the death of the water cooler moment.
A water cooler moment.
When there were only a handful of channels, a major television event, like the series finale of MMH or the Super Bowl or a major breaking news broadcast, was a deeply unifying cultural event.
Everyone saw it.
You could walk into your office or a coffee shop or a classroom the next day and know with near absolute certainty that your colleagues and peers had seen the exact same thing you had seen.
It provided an immediate, accessible point of connection.
Exactly. It was a shared social currency that allowed people with very different backgrounds to find common ground.
Yeah.
Today, if everyone is staring into their own hyper-tailored, algorithmically curated feed on demand, society struggles immensely to find those overlapping shared experiences. We are voluntarily isolating ourselves into hyper-specific entertainment silos.
It's kind of lonely when you put it like that.
It is.
So we have built this world of unprecedented choice. We have infinite options in what we buy at the grocery store, how we configure our electronics, what classes we take, and what media we consume.
Right.
But here is where the source material hits us with a fascinating, highly counterintuitive piece of data regarding the actual pleasure we derive from all this freedom.
This is where it gets really interesting.
The text notes that in consumer surveys, 93% of teenage girls report that shopping is their absolute favorite activity.
93%.
It is a hobby, a sport, a social event. But, and this is a massive but, when you ask adult consumers to rank the pleasure they get from various daily activities, grocery shopping ranks next to last.
Next to last.
It is universally despised. Other forms of routine shopping rank fifth from the bottom.
Wow.
The overarching, undeniable trend across the data is that people are spending significantly more time shopping and navigating choices than they used to, but they are enjoying the process significantly less.
That is the paradox right there.
Now, looking at this glaring contradiction, we have to ask the obvious question. If we don't like it, if it drains us and frustrates us, why do we keep engaging with it?
Good question.
Why don't we just ignore the extra options? If I know I hate the anxiety of grocery shopping, why don't I just walk in, grab my usual brand of crackers, ignore the other 84 options completely, and walk out feeling fine?
It is the most logical question to ask. And interestingly, it is exactly the behavior that standard economic theory dictates we should be exhibiting.
Okay, what does the theory say?
Classical economics operates on the fundamental assumption that humans are entirely rational actors who perfectly optimize their own utility.
Right.
The classical theory states, quite confidently, that adding options to a marketplace can only make a society better off.
Only better off.
Yes. Why? The logic is that the people who care deeply about the new niche options will benefit immensely from having exactly what they want, and the people who don't care can simply rationally ignore the newly added options and carry on exactly as before.
So it's a net positive.
According to the textbook, it is a mathematical win-win. There's supposedly zero cost to adding an option someone doesn't use.
Right. It assumes that our brains are perfectly efficient filters, that seeing something we don't want doesn't affect us at all. We just pan right past it.
But empirically, biologically, and psychologically, this assumption is completely demonstrably false. The human brain does not work like a perfectly efficient filter.
Yeah.
To prove just how false this classical economic theory is, the source material points to what might be the most famous foundational study in the entire field of the psychology of choice.
Oh, yes.
It comes from a series of studies titled When Choice is Demotivating, but it is universally referred to in the behavioral sciences as the JAM study.
Yes. The JAM study. I love this study.
It is a classic.
This is the absolute core of the argument. This study takes all these abstract theories about stereos and college courses and proves it with cold, hard retail data. Walk us through exactly how the researchers set this up.
All right, so the researchers partnered with an upscale, highly trafficked gourmet food store.
Oh?
They chose a busy weekend when the store was full of typical shoppers. They set up a professional tasting table near the entrance to sample a line of high-quality exotic jams brands like Wilkin and Sons. Customers passing by could taste samples on little crackers, and if they stopped to taste anything, they were handed a coupon for $1 off any jar of that specific brand of jam they chose to buy that day.
So everyone gets a coupon if they try it.
Right. Now, they ran this experiment under two strictly controlled alternating conditions.
What were the conditions?
In the first condition, the limited choice scenario, they placed a small, curated array of just 6 varieties of jam on the tasting table.
6 jams.
In the second condition, the extensive choice scenario,
Yeah.
they placed a massive, visually impressive array of 24 different varieties of jam on the table.
24.
And it was crucial to note that in both scenarios, the entire inventory of all 24 jams was readily available for purchase on the regular store shelves just a few aisles away.
Okay, so we have 2 tables. One with 6 jams, one with 24.
Right.
The first metric we naturally have to look at is initial attraction. Did the big, impressive display draw a bigger crowd? The data says yes. The large array of 24 jams attracted a significantly higher percentage of passing shoppers to stop at the table than the small array.
Which makes sense. It's a spectacle.
Yeah, for a traditional marketer or a store manager, this seems like an absolute, undeniable slam dunk. You put out more product, you create a bigger spectacle, you get more foot traffic, more eyeballs, more initial engagement. It feels like a massive win.
It does.
But we have to look past the vanity metric of foot traffic. We have to look at the actual conversion rate, the sales at the register.
And this is the specific data point that turns classical economics completely on its head and terrifies retailers. Let's look at the number.
Let's do it.
Of the people who stopped at the small array, the modest table with only 6 jams, 30% of them took their coupon, walked to the aisle, and actually bought a jar of jam.
30%.
30%. Anyone in retail or e-commerce will tell you that a 30% conversion rate from a free sample to a paid product is incredibly strong. It's a massive success.
It really is.
But let's look at the people who stopped at the large array. The impressive crowd-drawing table with 24 jams.
Okay.
Of those people, only 3% actually bought a jar.
3%. I just want to pause and make sure the scale of that failure sinks in for you listening.
It's massive.
30% conversion when you offer 6 options. 3% conversion when you offer 24 options.
Yep.
You increased the choices, you drew a bigger crowd, but you suffered a 10-fold drop in actual sales. A 90% collapse in revenue purely because you offered more choices.
It's unbelievable.
Why does seeing 24 jars of fruit preserved suddenly short-circuit the human brain and make people not want to buy anything?
The researchers analyzed the behavior and identified a few key psychological mechanisms at play here, all of which point back to the intense cognitive burden we discussed in the supermarket aisle.
Right.
First, let's look at the sheer math of comparison. A large array forces a massive exponential increase in the effort required to make a confident decision. If you are standing at a table with 6 jams, you might taste 2. Your brain can easily handle the comparison. You feel fairly confident in picking a favorite.
Sure.
But if you're standing at a table with 24 jams, the permutations are overwhelming. Even if you taste 2 or 3, your brain is loudly whispering, what if one of the other 21 flavors I didn't try is the perfect one?
What if I missed out?
Exactly. What if the boysenberries is good, but the black currant is life-changing? The mental effort required to systematically evaluate all 24 options, compare their subtle flavor notes, weigh them against each other, and make a definitive final choice is genuinely exhausting.
It's too much work.
So, faced with that overwhelming cognitive task, consumers take the path of least resistance. They decide not to decide.
They simply walk away.
They just abandon the cart.
It is easier to walk away with nothing than to do the mental heavy lifting required to find the quote-unquote best jam out of 24.
Exactly. But the second psychological explanation they uncovered is perhaps even more insidious.
How so?
Because it affects the people who do manage to push through and make a purchase.
The 3%.
Yes. It is the concept that the unchosen options actively, aggressively detract from the pleasure of the chosen one.
Wait, how does something I didn't buy ruin the thing I did buy?
Let's role play it. Let's say you do muscle through the fatigue at the big table.
Okay, I muscle through.
You evaluate the options, and you finally pick a jar of strawberry kiwi jam.
Solid choice.
You put it in your basket. As you walk to the register, and even the next morning when you spread it on your toast, your brain is plagued with lingering doubt.
Because I saw the other ones.
Because you saw 23 other highly attractive options, you can't stop thinking about their potential benefits. Maybe the blood orange marmalade would have been more tart. Maybe the fig preserve would have paired better with this specific bread.
Oh, man.
Thinking about the attractive, idealized features of all the options you rejected actively diminishes the real-world satisfaction you get from the option you actually chose.
So I'm comparing my jam to a fantasy jam.
You are constantly comparing your reality to a phantom ideal.
The ghosts of unchosen jams.
Yes.
So basically, my brain is actively punishing me for the 23 things I didn't buy, effectively ruining the one thing I did buy. I am manufacturing my own buyer's remorse purely because I know other options existed.
That is a perfect summary of the phenomenon. The presence of the alternatives poisons the choice you made.
Wow.
And the practical takeaway for entrepreneurs, leaders, or anyone selling a product or an idea here is perhaps the most actionable advice we can extract from the entire source text.
Which is?
Curation converts vastly better than cataloging, period.
Curation converts better than cataloging.
Whether you are running an online e-commerce store, a B2B consulting firm, a local restaurant, or a software platform, if you try to be everything to everyone by offering a massive, unfiltered array of options, you might get more initial clicks.
Or more window shoppers.
Right, more people stopping at your table.
Yeah.
But you will absolutely obliterate your actual sales conversion rate.
And hurt the people who do buy.
Yes. You will leave the few brave customers who do manage to buy from you feeling less satisfied and more prone to regret.
So what's the solution?
You have to take on the difficult job of being the editor for your customer. You must ruthlessly limit your offerings to increase your actual sales.
It requires a lot of bravery from a business owner to do that. It really does.
It goes against every instinct.
Yeah, it goes against every instinct we have to offer more. It feels like you are leaving money on the table by hiding options.
But the data doesn't lie.
No, the data from the JAM study proves that limiting choice isn't restrictive. It is an act of deep, empathetic customer service.
I love that. Empathetic customer service.
You are saving them from the ghosts of the unchosen jams.
You really are.
So we have proven empirically that too many options paralyze us, kill retail sales, and make us deeply unhappy with what we eventually choose.
Yes.
Which brings us right back to that lingering, frustrating question. If we know this, why can't we just put on our blinders?
Why can't we just tune it out?
Exactly. Why can't we just navigate the modern world ignoring the noise?
Well, the source material breaks down 4 specific reasons why simply tuning out the extra options is practically impossible in modern society.
Okay, let's explore these because I think they explain so much of our daily anxiety.
It is a critical question to answer. If choice is hurting us, the logical defense is ignorance. But Schwartz identifies 4 distinct structural barriers that prevent us from doing so.
What's the first one?
First, we have to acknowledge that an entire multi-billion-dollar industry of marketers, advertisers, and algorithm designers is actively working to make products fundamentally impossible to ignore.
Right. They aren't going to let you ignore them.
No, these options are not waiting quietly on a dimly lit shelf for you to seek them out. They are aggressively thrust into our faces.
Everywhere we look.
They are interrupting our digital feeds, they are on billboards, they are sponsored videos, they are pop-up ads. It takes a massive amount of active, conscious, exhausting energy to constantly block out this level of sophisticated bombardment.
Right. You can't just ignore the billboard when it's flashing directly into your living room window or when the algorithm places it directly in the middle of the article you are trying to read. It forces its way into your cognitive space.
Exactly.
What is the second structural barrier?
The second barrier is deeply rooted in our evolutionary psychology, our innate human tendency towards social comparison.
Social comparison.
We are social creatures, and we constantly look around at what our peers are doing and use them as a benchmark for our own status and satisfaction.
Okay, how does that apply here?
The source text uses a highly relatable example to illustrate this. Imagine you are sitting on a crowded airplane.
Okay.
You are perfectly happy with your clunky, reliable 5-year-old laptop. It does everything you need it to do. You have no intention of buying a new one?
I am content.
You are content.
Yeah.
But then, The person sitting directly next to you pulls out an extremely light, razor-thin, beautiful new laptop with a crystal-clear retina screen.
Oh.
Without you doing anything, your choices as a consumer have suddenly been expanded. You didn't go shopping, you didn't open a catalog, but the sheer presence of a superior alternative in your immediate social environment forces you to reevaluate your reality.
That is painfully accurate. Theodore Roosevelt said, "Comparison is the thief of joy," but in this context, it's also the engine of the entire consumer economy.
It really is.
Once you see the sleek laptop, you can't unsee it. Your clunky laptop suddenly feels inadequate, purely because you now know a better option exists.
Yes.
You didn't want a choice, but the choice was forced upon you by proximity. Okay, the third barrier.
The third barrier is a return to our old friend, the tyranny of small decisions.
Ah, the incremental trap.
Yes, we rarely make a massive, conscious leap into overwhelming choice. We slide into it incrementally.
Right.
We tell ourselves, I am just going to check one more store to see if they have a better price, or I'm just going to read 3 more reviews before I buy this.
So more.
We don't intend to subject ourselves to evaluating 50 different options, but because each individual step, each click, each store visit feels so small and justifiable, we slide down the slope, one micro decision at a time, until we are suddenly drowning in information.
It is the trap of incremental investment. You feel like you've already spent 20 minutes researching, so you might as well spend 10 more to make absolutely sure you are getting the best deal.
And suddenly it's 2 a.m. and you have 30 tabs open comparing toaster ovens.
Exactly. And the fourth reason, the one the source material suggests, is the most deeply rooted and perhaps the most damaging.
This is the most profound point in the chapter. People ultimately won't, or can't, ignore the barrage of alternatives because they fundamentally do not believe that having too many alternatives can be a problem.
Wait, really?
We operate under a deep, pervasive cultural sanctification of choice.
Cultural sanctification.
Western culture, and American culture in particular, equates personal freedom so heavily with consumer choice that the benefits of infinite options seem completely, unquestionably self-evident.
It's like a religion.
We treat it as a religious truth. Choice equals freedom, and freedom is always good.
Ah, I see where this is going. So when we are standing in that supermarket aisle, completely overwhelmed and paralyzed by the 85 different types of crackers, our cultural programming prevents us from blaming the crackers.
Exactly. Because we have been conditioned since birth to believe that abundant choice is the ultimate manifestation of freedom, when we experience the inevitable dissatisfaction, the crushing anxiety, or the frustrating hassle during a shopping trip, we externalize the blame onto absolutely anything but the array of choices.
Oh, wow.
We blame the surly store employees. We blame the traffic jam we sat in getting to the mall. We blame the confusing layout of the aisles.
Anything else?
Or, most tragically and most commonly, we blame ourselves.
We blame ourselves.
We internalize the failure. We think, I must be stupid or indecisive or weak for not being able to quickly pick a simple box of crackers or choose the right college major.
That's heartbreaking, really.
We never point the finger at the actual systemic culprit. The massive, overwhelming, inherently paralyzing array of options that was designed to break our cognitive limits.
That is incredibly heavy. We are suffering under the weight of this system, but we are blaming our own perceived inadequacies instead of recognizing the environment as hostile.
Exactly. The environment is the problem.
Let's pull all of these massive threads together. We've gone from the overwhelming fluorescence of the grocery aisle to the high stakes of the electronics store.
We've covered a lot.
We've flipped through the endless permutations of mail order catalogs. We've sat in on the fragmented reality of modern college lectures. We've mourned the death of shared entertainment, and we've deeply analyzed the psychological trap of the jam study.
Yeah.
We've seen how this explosion of choice has fundamentally, irreversibly changed how we interact with the world and with each other.
When we synthesize all of these distinct scenarios, it raises a crucial defining question about the nature of modern life.
Okay, what is it?
The political philosopher Isaiah Berlin made a highly relevant distinction between 2 concepts of liberty.
Liberty.
Negative liberty and positive liberty.
Break those down for me.
Negative liberty is essentially freedom from constraint. It is the freedom from being dictated to, freedom from oppression, freedom from someone else telling you exactly what you must do.
Okay, freedom from about it.
Positive liberty, on the other hand, is freedom to. It is the availability of infinite opportunities and resources to act, to choose, and to author every detail of your own life.
Freedom too.
For a very long time in human history, our primary struggle was fighting for freedom from. We fought to dismantle rigid, oppressive systems.
Right.
But now, having largely won many of those battles in the consumer sphere, we have shifted entirely into a world utterly obsessed with freedom too.
Yeah, we want to choose everything.
We demand the freedom to choose every minute, trivial detail of our existence. And what the source material has rigorously demonstrated today is that when we are forced to continuously invest our precious time, our limited energy, our self-doubt, and our dread into evaluating everyday decisions, this positive choice no longer liberates us.
It tyrannizes us.
It tyrannizes us.
Yeah.
The grand tragic paradox of this era is that in our relentless, unyielding pursuit of absolute personal freedom through the acquisition of endless consumer options, we haven't actually liberated ourselves.
What have we done?
We have simply accidentally constructed a completely new, infinitely more complex kind of cage.
A cage made of 24 varieties of jam and 6 million stereo configurations.
Exactly.
We've seen exactly what happens when we go shopping for jeans, jams, and even college degrees. It creates friction, lost sales, and daily frustration.
Constant frustration.
But what happens when this explosion of complexity stops just being a hassle at the checkout line and starts actively, aggressively messing with our deep psychological well-being?
That is the big question.
What happens when the relentless pressure to make the absolute perfect choice in every aspect of life begins to manifest as clinical anxiety, crushing, inescapable regret, and genuine depression?
It's a dark turn.
That is exactly the dark territory we will explore in the next chapter of this deep dive.
So I was standing in the toothpaste aisle of this massive pharmacy yesterday, and I was there for what must have been, it had to be 20 minutes.
Wow, 20 minutes just for toothpaste.
Literally 20 minutes, just staring at mint paste.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was, tartar control, whitening, enamel repair, deep clean, charcoal, baking soda.
Right.
And then there was sensitive plus whitening, and then one that just claimed to be like pro health, whatever that actually means.
Yeah.
And I actually felt my chest tightening up.
Oh, absolutely. The anxiety just kicks in.
It really does.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking, have you ever walked into a store just to buy something incredibly simple, like a pair of jeans, a toothbrush, or picking a basic cell phone plan, and suddenly felt completely, utterly paralyzed by the options?
It's a universal experience at this point.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, we live in an era with more freedom, more abundance, and more autonomy than, like, any humans in the entire history of our species. So why does the simple act of choosing feel less like liberation and more like a trap? Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, it feels like a trap because our biological hardware is just violently clashing with our modern environment. The tension you felt in that aisle, that is a central focus of Chapter 3 of Barry Schwartz's work.
Right, his work on the paradox of choice.
Exactly. So in this deep dive, we're looking at this really profound societal shift. We're going to explore how we moved from living with simple, bundled routines to being forced into this constant, exhausting state of foraging for everyday decisions.
Foraging for toothpaste, essentially.
Yeah, literally. And we're going to map out the hidden psychological mechanics of how the brain actually processes choices and why the sheer volume of them is just short-circuiting our well-being.
Which is so crucial right now.
It is. What's fascinating here is that for anyone interested in business, entrepreneurship, or just, optimizing their own life, understanding the architecture of choice is essential. Knowing the difference between a deliberate chooser and a passive picker is basically the ultimate competitive advantage today.
I am so ready to get into this because I genuinely think we all walk around with this baseline cultural assumption that more choice automatically equals more freedom.
Oh, totally. It's deeply ingrained.
Right. It is the defining promise of modern consumerism. You walk into a supermarket and seeing 85 different varieties of crackers feels like a triumph of the free market.
Like we finally made it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sodium, no sodium, fat-free, regular, bite-size, imported. It feels like we've won.
Yeah.
But Schwartz makes this incredible argument that we've actually experienced a massive reversal of human progress.
He does, yeah.
And to understand how wild that claim is, we really have to redefine what progress actually meant for most of human history.
Right, because to grasp the magnitude of this reversal, we need to look at how human consciousness operates at a baseline level. I mean, filtering out extraneous information is arguably the most vital function your brain performs.
Because there's just too much data.
Exactly. At any given second, your nervous system is bombarded by millions of bits of sensory data. The temperature of the air, the hum of the refrigerator, the feeling of your clothes against your skin.
All the stuff you don't even notice until you think about it.
Right. If your conscious mind had to process every single one of those inputs all the time, you would instantly collapse into a catatonic state. Your brain is a supreme filtering machine.
It's a bottleneck by design.
By design, yes. It evolved to ignore almost everything, presenting you only with what requires immediate conscious action.
Right, like you only notice the hum of the fridge when it suddenly stops, or when it makes a weird noise.
That's exactly the right way to think about it. Now, if you apply that biological filtering concept to human cultural evolution, things get really interesting. For thousands of years, the trajectory of human progress was entirely about reducing the number of daily choices we had to make just to survive.
Because early humans were, literal foragers.
Right. When you woke up on the savannah, your entire day was a series of high-stakes, time-consuming, explicit choices. Where is the water? Which plants are safe today? Where are the predators?
You were constantly scanning.
Constantly. The cognitive load was immense because the environment was completely uncurated.
Your radar was always on, and I guess a bad choice meant you literally didn't survive the afternoon.
Exactly. But as cultures advanced, we discovered the ultimate cognitive relief, which was specialization and trade. We developed agriculture. Not everyone had to wake up and figure out how to forage for calories anymore.
You could just be the blacksmith.
Yes. You become a blacksmith, focus on one specific skill, and trade your tools for food. And as this evolved over centuries, it culminated in the concept of the general store in, early modern towns.
So I picture the classic Old West mercantile.
Mm-hmm.
You walk in and you need flour. You don't stand there comparing 50 brands of artisan wheat.
No, you definitely don't.
You just ask the guy behind the counter for flour, and he hauls out a sack and hands it to you.
Exactly. The variety was meager, sometimes practically non-existent, but the time and the cognitive energy you spent procuring the necessities of life was incredibly low. Society had successfully bundled our basic economic offerings.
The merchant basically did the filtering for you.
He did. The trajectory of civilization was moving toward less daily foraging and more predictable bundled routines.
Okay, so I see the trajectory. But over the past few decades, we've basically taken that entire process of bundling and just shattered it.
Violently shattered it, yeah.
We are back out in the wilderness. Only instead of foraging for berries or safe drinking water, I'm foraging for car insurance, streaming services, and, toothpaste.
The unbundling has been dramatic, and it has infiltrated areas of life that used to be completely invisible to us. A perfect example from the research is the telecommunications industry.
Oh, right.
Think about utilities a generation ago. They were regulated monopolies.
The era of my bell. My parents always talk about this. They say you didn't shop around for a phone company.
You didn't. You moved into a new house or apartment, and you just contacted the local phone company to turn on the service. You even rented the physical phone from them.
Oh, wow. I forgot about renting the actual phone.
Yeah. The service was practically an invisible backdrop to your life. Then came the breakup of the monopolies, the deregulation, and eventually, of course, the cellular revolution.
Right.
And suddenly, a utility that required zero cognitive overhead has become this dizzying arena of choice.
It's an absolute nightmare now.
Yeah.
If I need a new phone, it's not just choosing a device. I have to choose the carrier, then the data cap.
And the family plans.
Exactly. Do I want the family bundling? Do I need international roaming? What's the upgrade cycle? Am I leasing the phone or buying it outright? It never stops.
It really doesn't.
I get mailers and emails constantly trying to get me to switch providers because someone else is offering a slightly different puzzle of features. What used to be background noise is now this heavy, continuous cognitive burden.
And that burden adds up fast.
But, I'm putting myself in the shoes of someone listening to this right now. And I have to imagine they're thinking, wait a minute, isn't having those choices inherently a good thing?
Sure, yeah.
Because if a government or a massive corporation suddenly declared, you no longer get to choose your phone provider, we're issuing you one standard device and one standard plan, people would riot in the streets. I would riot. We desperately want the freedom to choose.
And that reaction is entirely justified. Autonomy is fundamentally tied to human well-being. If someone strips away your agency in an area you care about, the psychological reaction is severe.
Right. Nobody wants to be controlled.
Exactly. We need choice. The problem we are facing isn't that choice itself is bad. The problem is what happens when you multiply that freedom across every single microscopic domain of your life.
The compounding effect.
Right. The economist Fred Hirsch coined a brilliant term for this phenomenon. He called it the tyranny of small decisions.
The tyranny of small decisions.
Mm,
That sounds like playing a really, really poorly designed video game.
how do you mean?
Like imagine you're playing this epic fantasy role-playing game. You want the freedom to choose your character's class, their weapons, their moral alignment. That's the fun part.
Right, the big choices.
But what if the game designers also made you manually control your character's breathing? Like press X to inhale, press Y to exhale, press B to blink so your eyes don't dry out.
Oh, that sounds awful.
It would be. Technically, they've given you more freedom and more control over your character, but the game becomes completely unplayable because you're so bogged down in microscopic maintenance that you can't actually go on the quest.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize Hirsch's concept. We love the freedom to choose our weapons and alignment, our career, our partner, our core values.
The stuff that matters.
Exactly. And in any specific isolated domain, if you ask a consumer, would you like more options for your phone plan? They will almost always say a resounding yes. We vote yes to individual choices in specific domains.
Right.
But here's the catch. We never get the opportunity to cast a vote on the entire cumulative package of choices.
Right. Nobody ever sent me a ballot asking, would you like to have 85 tabs open in your brain at all times just to manage your daily life?
No one voted for the aggregate cognitive load. By enthusiastically saying yes to options in every particular situation, jeans, coffee, insurance, software, we unknowingly voted yes to a state of perpetual cognitive overload.
Which is wild. And I'm thinking about the business application of this. If I'm an entrepreneur or product manager listening to this flips the conventional wisdom completely upside down.
It really does.
Because we are taught that adding features, adding tiers, adding customization is how you add value. I'll give my clients 15 different service packages. They'll love the flexibility.
Right, the more is more approach.
Yeah. But if your customer is already drowning in the tyranny of small decisions, handing them more options isn't a gift. It's a burden.
It's a huge imposition on their time and energy. True value in the modern economy often comes from doing the exact opposite of what we've been taught. It comes from curating.
Doing the filtering for them?
Exactly. The businesses and services that generate the most loyalty today are the ones that absorb the cognitive burden on behalf of the customer. They look at the landscape and they confidently say, here are the 3 absolute best options. We removed the noise for you.
You're doing them a massive favor. And this connects deeply to how our brains manage energy day to day. If we are going to survive this constant demand to forage for choices, we have to understand the mechanics of how we process actions, right?
We do, and the research draws a really stark line between implicit choices and explicit choices.
Okay, let's break that down.
That distinction is the bedrock of mental energy conservation. An implicit choice is something you do automatically without conscious deliberation. An explicit choice requires active, conscious evaluation.
Okay.
The major unseen transformation of modern life is that thousands of things that used to be implicit have been dragged out into the light and made explicit. And that transition comes with a heavy biological cost.
Let me see if I can paint a picture of this to make it concrete. Think about a standard, incredibly boring Tuesday morning. The alarm goes off, you stagger out of bed, feet hit the floor.
I've all been there.
Right. You walk into the bathroom, you grab your toothbrush, squeeze the paste on brush, turn the shower, wash, get out, dry off. You open your drawer, put on your underwear, grab your keys, and head out the door.
A completely mundane sequence.
Exactly. But logically, technically speaking, every single micro-action in that sequence is a choice. The options exist.
They do.
You could choose to hit snooze. You could choose to skip brushing your teeth. You could absolutely choose to go to the office without underwear. I mean, the universe allows for those possibilities.
It does, yes.
But psychologically, the choice is entirely unreal to you. You don't stand frozen in front of the bathroom mirror weighing the pros and cons of dental hygiene, or whether wearing pants aligns with your core values today. It is an automaton process.
And we should be incredibly grateful for that automaton process. From a neurological standpoint, conscious, explicit decision-making happens largely in the prefrontal cortex.
The front part of the brain.
Right. And it is incredibly energy intensive. It burns glucose at a very high rate. Implicit routines, however, are offloaded to older, deeper parts of the brain, like the basal ganglia.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and those areas run on essentially zero extra energy. If the burden of making every Tuesday morning activity a deliberate, conscious, prefrontal choice fell on your shoulders, you would be cognitively depleted before you even poured your coffee.
So habits aren't just about efficiency. They are literally a biological shield protecting our sanity.
They are an energy conservation mechanism. To feel the contrast, compare your automatic Tuesday morning to a Saturday morning.
Oh, Saturdays are completely different.
Exactly. On a Saturday, that rigid structure falls away. You wake up and suddenly the implicit routine becomes explicit. Should I shower now or should I wait until after I run errands? Should I even shave today? What time should I eat?
Oh, man. Saturday mornings can actually be weirdly stressful for exactly that reason. I sometimes find myself sitting on a couch for an hour just scrolling on my phone because I haven't decided what the optimal first move of the day is.
Yeah, right. The choice became real and it paralyzed you.
Because it requires active mental energy to chart the course when those implicit rules are removed.
Yes, and the danger of the modern world is that it is constantly trying to turn our Tuesdays into Saturdays. It wants to make every purchase, every subscription, every daily tool an explicit choice that we have to evaluate.
Wow. So if I'm doing a personal audit of my life right now, the goal shouldn't be to optimize every single decision to perfection. The goal should be to aggressively identify low-stakes, explicit choices that are draining my battery and force them back into being implicit habits.
That's exactly it.
But this is the whole Steve Jobs wearing a black turtleneck every day thing, isn't it?
It's the quintessential example. He recognized that as a CEO, he had a finite amount of prefrontal energy each day. Deciding what to wear is an explicit choice.
So he just removed it.
Right. By adopting a uniform, he turned it into an implicit rule. He didn't have to evaluate his closet, he just executed the routine. He preserved his cognitive bandwidth for the high-stakes decisions that actually moved the needle for his company.
That makes so much sense. Because when you do finally hit a wall where you have to make a high-stakes decision like buying a house or changing careers or picking a medical treatment, you need the tank to be full.
You absolutely do.
And part of the reason you need the tank to be full is that making a genuinely good decision is phenomenally complex. The research breaks down the anatomy of a good decision into 6 distinct steps. And when you look at them laid out, it is wild how much mental math is required.
The structural anatomy of decision-making is rigorous. If you want to make a truly rational, optimized choice, here's the protocol you are supposed to follow.
Okay, lay it on me.
Step 1, figure out your goals. Step 2, evaluate the absolute and relative importance of each of those goals. Step 3, array all your possible options.
Right.
Step 4, evaluate how likely each option is to meet your specific goals. Step 5, pick the winning option. And step 6, which is critical, use the consequences of that choice to modify your goals for the future.
Okay, let me walk through this with a painful personal memory because I want to see where the friction actually happens in real life. Years ago, I had to find a new apartment.
The classic high-stakes decision.
Exactly. So, step 1, my goals. I needed cheap rent, a safe neighborhood, a short commute to work, and ideally some outdoor space like a balcony.
Okay.
Step 2, evaluating their importance. I was broke, so cheap rent was the absolute king. Safety was second. Commute was third. The balcony was just a nice to have.
Perfect. You've established your criteria and weighted them. Now you enter step 3, arraying the options.
And this is where the nightmare began. I opened up the rental websites, and there were hundreds of listings. I'm making spreadsheets, I'm touring places.
Gathering all the data.
Which leads to step 4, evaluating how likely each option meets the goals. So I find apartment A. It's incredibly cheap, but it's an hour away from work, and the neighborhood is sketchy.
Doesn't meet the safety or commute goals.
Right. Then I find apartment B. It's right next to my office, super safe, but it blows my budget completely.
Fails the primary goal.
Exactly. Then I find apartment C. The rent is right on the edge of my budget. It's fairly safe. It has a massive, beautiful balcony, but it's a 45-minute commute involving 2 different trains.
So, step 5, you have to pick the winner.
I pick the winner. I get seduced by the balcony and the decent rent, and I sign the lease for apartment C.
Okay, and how did step 6, the feedback loop, play out?
It was a disaster.
Oh, no.
6 months into the lease, I realized I never used the balcony because I was always exhausted from the commute. The 2 trains were draining the life out of me. The consequence of the choice revealed that my initial weighting in step 2 was completely wrong.
The feedback loop in action.
Yes.
Okay.
I discovered that a short, easy commute was actually the most important thing to my mental health. I just didn't have the self-awareness to know it at the time. So that pain modified my goals for the next time I had to move. Next lease, commute time was the undeniable #1 priority.
See, that is a perfect textbook execution of the 6 steps. You went through the entire cycle, including learning from the error, but I want you to reflect on the timeline of that process. How much time, emotional energy, and spreadsheet management did that one decision take?
Weeks. It consumed my life for a solid month. And that brings up the massive red flag in this whole framework, doesn't it?
It does.
Because if that is what it takes to make one good decision, how is anyone supposed to do this for every aspect of their life?
You can't.
If I have to pick health insurance, am I supposed to map out my goals, weight the deductibles against the copays, array 50 different plans, cross-reference the in-network doctors, predict my medical needs for the next 12 months, and run the probability matrix?
Yeah.
It's impossible.
It is mathematically and biologically impossible. Nobody has the time, the processing power, or the emotional stamina to be perfectly thorough and accurate with every decision. The combinatorial explosion of options in our society breaks the 6-step model entirely.
It just completely buckles.
It does, and Schwartz points out that when this model breaks under the weight of overabundance, we suffer 3 highly unfortunate effects.
Okay, what are they?
First, decisions require significantly more effort just to reach a baseline conclusion. Second, because we can't thoroughly evaluate everything, mistakes become much more likely. And third, and this is the most insidious part, the psychological consequences of those mistakes become vastly more severe.
Let's hover on that third point for a second. Why do the psychological consequences get worse? I mean, a mistake is a mistake, right? If I pick the wrong apartment, it's a bummer. But why does the sheer volume of options make the pain of that mistake heavier?
Because of where you assign the blame. Imagine you lived in a small town 30 years ago, and there were literally only 2 apartments available for rent in the entire town.
Okay.
You pick one, and it turns out to be drafty, and the plumbing makes a weird noise. Who do you blame?
I blame the universe.
Yeah.
I blame the terrible housing market in this tiny town. I say, well, I had no choices. It's not my fault.
Precisely. The locus of responsibility is external. Your self-esteem is protected because you did the best with what you had.
Right.
But now, imagine you live in a modern metropolis. There are 10,000 apartments available on the app. You spend weeks filtering, touring, and agonizing. You finally pick one, and it turns out to be drafty with bad plumbing. Who do you blame now?
Oh, wow. I blame myself.
Exactly.
I think with 10,000 options out there, the perfect apartment definitely existed, and I was just too stupid or too lazy to find it. I did the math wrong.
The locus of responsibility shifts entirely internal. The abundance of choice removes your ability to blame the world. It creates an intense, crushing burden of regret and self-blame.
That is so true.
As we find more and more critical decisions placed on our plates, managing our own retirement allocations, navigating complex educational paths for our kids, choosing between nuanced medical treatments, we are often forced to make those choices with entirely inadequate reflection because we just don't have the bandwidth.
We're running on empty.
We are. The stakes are immense, the effort required is exhausting, and the guilt of inevitable error is devastating to our mental health.
That is incredibly heavy, but also, weirdly validating. It explains why we all feel so anxious all the time.
It's structural anxiety.
Right. So if I'm taking a practical lesson away from this, it's a mandate to give yourself grace. You have to understand that in a complex, overabundant world, perfect decision-making is an illusion.
A total illusion.
You have to actively and aggressively lower the stakes on everyday choices.
Yeah.
You need to look at an apartment that hits 3 out of 4 criteria and say, this is good enough. You have to lower the bar so that when the inevitable minor annoyance pops up, your self-worth isn't completely destroyed by the assumption that you failed some cosmic test.
That is the exact right posture. And understanding why we feel that regret so sharply requires us to look under the hood of how our brains actually evaluate the outcomes of our choices. Because our evaluations are not objective.
We're not robots.
No, we do not view the world through a lens of pure math or pure logic. We are deeply flawed, highly emotional accountants. And to truly grasp this, we have to talk about the behavioral economists who mapped this out. The Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman and his collaborator Amos Tversky.
Kahneman and Tversky. These are the guys who essentially invented behavioral economics, right?
They did, yes.
They flipped the entire field of traditional economics on its head because traditional economics assumed humans were rational, calculating machines.
Exactly. Traditional economics believed that if you presented a human with a financial choice, they would just calculate the absolute bottom line and act accordingly. Kahneman and Tversky proved that was completely false.
They developed prospect theory.
They did. And at its core is the concept of framing. What they discovered is that human beings do not evaluate choices in absolute terms. We evaluate them relative to a baseline, what they called the hedonic 0 point.
The hedonic 0 point.
Yes, and the shocking part is how easily that 0 point can be manipulated by language, context, and expectations.
This is where the concert ticket scenario comes in, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because when I read this in the material, my brain just short-circuited. It perfectly exposes how wildly irrational our internal accounting actually is.
It's a classic thought experiment. Let's walk through it.
Please.
I'll set up the two scenarios for you. I want you to imagine scenario A. You love a particular band, and you decide you want to go to their concert. You buy a ticket in advance for $20.
Okay, $20 spent.
The day of the show, you drive to the venue, walk up to the door, reach into your pocket, and realize you lost the ticket. It fell out somewhere. The seats aren't assigned. There's no digital record. The physical ticket is just gone.
Tragic.
You are standing at the box office. Do you pull out your wallet and pay another $20 to get inside?
When you ask people this, most of them say no. They turn around and go home.
Correct. Less than 50% of respondents in the research say they would buy a second ticket.
Which makes sense emotionally. You feel ripped off.
Right. Now, consider scenario B. You want to go see the exact same band. You haven't bought a ticket yet. You plan to buy it at the door. You drive to the venue, walk up to the box office, reach into your wallet to grab your cash, and realize you lost a $20 bill somewhere along the way.
Okay, down $20.
But you still have enough money in your wallet to cover the show. Do you still buy the $20 concert ticket?
And in this scenario, almost everyone says yes. The vast majority of people just buy the ticket and go enjoy the music. They do. But if you strip away the narrative and look at the absolute bottom line math, both of these scenarios are identical.
Completely identical.
In both scenario A and scenario B, if you go to the concert, your net worth decreases by $40, the lost item plus the new ticket.
Yeah.
In both scenarios, if you skip the concert, your net worth decreases by $20.
The objective reality of your bank account is exactly the same.
So why do we behave like two completely different species depending on which piece of paper we dropped?
It all comes down to what Kahneman and Tversky called psychological accounts. Our brains don't operate out of one giant generalized ledger. We compartmentalize our resources.
We put them in different buckets.
Right. And there's a strong evolutionary argument for why we do this. If early humans viewed every small loss as a devastating blow to their total survival odds, they would succumb to despair. We compartmentalize to manage emotional damage.
Oh, that makes sense. We put things in little mental buckets to protect ourselves.
Precisely. In scenario A, where you lose the ticket, your brain had already opened a psychological ledger specifically labeled the concert account. You charged $20 to that account when you bought the first ticket.
Okay, the account is open.
When you lose it and consider buying another, your brain calculates that the cost of this specific concert is suddenly $40. For most people, $40 violates their internal valuation for that specific experience. The account is overdrawn, so they refuse to pay.
It feels like a ripoff, even though it's my own fault I lost the ticket.
Exactly. But look at scenario B. You lose a $20 bill. Your brain charges that loss to a different psychological ledger. It goes into a general miscellaneous expenses bucket or a bad luck bucket.
Ah, I see.
You haven't opened the concert account yet. When you step up to the box office, the cost of the concert is still safely framed at its original price, $20. The cost hasn't changed, so you buy the ticket.
Both the cost of the concert and the lost money are charged to separate mental accounts, keeping your internal balance sheet feeling acceptable.
Yes.
It's all about how the situation is framed.
Yes.
We are basically lying to ourselves to feel better about the math.
We absolutely are.
There's another brilliant example in the research about gas stations that shows how powerful the words we use are in setting that baseline.
Oh, the gas station framing is perfect.
Imagine two gas stations right across the street from each other. They both charge $3 a gallon if you pay with cash and $3.10 a gallon if you use a credit card. The mathematical reality at both stations is identical. But gas station A puts a huge sign out front that says, discount for paying cash. This framing sets the baseline, the hedonic 0 point, at the higher $3.10 credit card price.
Right.
So if you pull up and pay cash, you feel delighted. You feel like you've won a victory over the system. You are moving into the positive side of your mental ledger.
And then look at gas station B. They put up a sign that says, surcharge for using credit.
Oof, just the word surcharge.
Exactly. This framing sets the 0 point at the lower $3 cash price.
Ah.
If you pull up and use your credit card, you are infuriated. You feel penalized. You feel like you are being extorted, moving into the negative side of the ledger.
Even though the actual dollars leaving my bank account are exactly the same.
The objective state of affairs is identical, but the subjective emotional response is the difference between delight and anger, based entirely on where the fine told your brain to put the 0 point.
That is wild. So if I'm navigating my own life, I have to realize that I have a highly creative and, frankly, highly corrupt accountant when it comes to my own mental balance sheets.
We all are.
If I'm reeling from a perceived loss or I'm stuck in a tough negotiation, I need to pause and ask, am I a victim of framing right now?
That is the crucial question.
Because if I redefine my baseline, if I intentionally move my own hedonic 0 point, I can completely alter how I emotionally experience a situation. I don't have to be a victim to how the world frames the offer.
Taking control of how choices are framed for you is a massive step toward regaining your autonomy. And this brings us to the ultimate synthesis of Schwartz's chapter.
Okay, let's tie it all together.
When you combine the historical explosion of options, the draining of our prefrontal cortex, the mathematical impossibility of perfect evaluation, and our flawed mental accounting, you arrive at a critical fork in the road.
How do you behave in a world that demands so much of you?
Exactly. Because if we aren't highly intentional, the sheer weight of this environment degrades us. We devolve from being active choosers into being passive pickers.
Choosers versus pickers. I love this distinction because it gives a name to a feeling I think we all have but can't quite articulate.
It's a very visceral distinction.
Let me try to visualize a picker. Think of a picker as someone standing on a moving walkway at an airport, and they are watching a wall of monitors flash by at 3x speed.
Okay.
They are totally overwhelmed by the velocity and the volume of the information. They can't process it, so they just reach out and randomly grab this or that as it flies by, hoping for the best.
Yes.
It's the exact physical posture you have in the cereal aisle when you've given up. You just grab a box of cornflakes because your brain is fried and you want to escape the fluorescent lights.
You're just trying to end the interaction.
Right. Being a picker is a passive, reactive, defensive state. You aren't driving the car, you're just trying not to crash.
That's a very accurate description. A picker is reacting to the menu presented to them, trying to minimize immediate pain or effort.
Right.
A chooser, on the other hand, operates from a place of active agency. A chooser steps off the moving walkway. They pause the video. A chooser takes the time to reflect on what is genuinely important to them.
They engage that step one from the 6 steps.
Exactly. They weigh the short-term and long-term consequences of a decision. And critically, a chooser engages their self-awareness. They ask a profound question. What does this choice say about me as a person? Does this align with my values?
A chooser has standards. They aren't just reacting to stimuli.
Yes. And perhaps the most empowering trait of a true chooser is the awareness that if none of the available alternatives on the menu are satisfactory, they have the agency to create the right alternative themselves.
Oh, it's huge.
It is. A picker looks at a bad menu and picks the least bad option. A chooser looks at a bad menu and goes to a different restaurant or goes home and cooks. They aren't confined by the framing the world provided.
The real tragedy of modern choice proliferation, having hundreds of cable channels, endless dating apps, 50 phone plans, is that it robs us of the time and energy required to be choosers.
It does.
The world throws so much explicit decision-making at us that we are forced to become pickers just to survive the sheer volume of the day. We are forced to compromise our standards just to get to bed on time.
It creates a deficit of reflection. Good decisions, meaningful decisions, take time and attention. And the only way we can find that time in an abundant world is by radically, unapologetically ticking our spots.
Right. So if I'm taking all of this and applying it to my life right now, the move isn't to try and be a chooser for every single thing. That's the trap.
That is the trap. You burn out.
The move is to not let the world dictate my posture. I need to sit down and actively designate the 2 or 3 specific domains in my life where I'm going to invest the energy to be a thoughtful, deliberate chooser.
Pick your battles.
Yes. Maybe it's my career trajectory, my choice of life partner, and my physical health. I'm going to deploy the 6 steps there. I'm going to watch my mental ledgers there.
Protect those domains.
And this might be the hardest part for some of this. I have to give myself permission to just be a picker everywhere else. I have to let it go.
You do.
Pick the easiest phone plan. Buy the same brand of jeans. Grab the basic toothpaste. Reclaim that cognitive energy.
If we pull all these threads together to view the soul of this chapter, it demands a profound shift in how we conceptualize freedom. We have been conditioned since childhood to believe that more options inherently equal more freedom.
It's the water we swim in.
Right. But true autonomy isn't found in drowning in a sea of endless alternatives, frantically picking just to keep your head above water while your cognitive battery drains.
No, that's exhaustion.
True freedom is the self-awareness to curate your own environment. It is the ability to recognize how your psychological accounts are being manipulated, to control how your choices are framed, and to consciously, deliberately decide when to step into the powerful role of a chooser.
It really changes how I see my own daily frustrations. So what does this all mean for you listening today? You now have the map. You know the evolutionary history of how we became foragers again in the modern marketplace.
You understand the neuroscience of why your Tuesday routine protects your brain.
Exactly. And you know how to spot the trap of the passive picker. You even know that your brain is keeping rigged psychological ledgers, and you know how to reframe them.
You're equipped.
But before we wrap up, I want you to mull over a slightly darker question. Let's say you take all this knowledge, you optimize your habits, you curate your environment, and you become absolutely fiercely determined to make only the perfect, absolute best choice in the areas that matter to you. You refuse to settle.
A dangerous game.
Right. Could that relentless, optimized pursuit of the best be the exact thing that is making you miserable? What happens when your standards become so high that the world can no longer meet them? That psychological trap, the tension between the maximizer and the satisficer, is exactly what we will be diving into next time.
Imagine walking into a supermarket, right? And there's only one type of cereal, one type of milk, just one type of bread on the shelf.
Sounds like an absolute dystopian nightmare, honestly.
Right, because we're so conditioned to believe that having 100 choices is, well, it's the ultimate luxury. It's the pinnacle of modern freedom.
Yeah.
But the data actually shows that standing in front of those, 100 boxes of cereal, demanding the absolute best one is literally rewiring your brain for misery.
It really is.
So what if the relentless pursuit of the perfect choice is the exact thing guaranteeing your dissatisfaction?
Yeah, that's one of the great paradoxes of modern life, isn't it? So in this deep dive, we're really examining the hidden mechanics of how we decide and choose. We're going to explore the cognitive traps that totally skew our judgment.
Which we all fall into, by the way.
Oh, absolutely. All of us. And we'll look at why our brains are biologically wired to make just terrible predictions about our future desires. Plus, we'll get into the critical difference between those who seek perfection and those who seek what psychologists call good enough.
Which is such a fascinating concept, because if you're leading a team or building a business, or honestly just trying to navigate this world of infinite options, understanding these internal mechanisms is an absolute superpower.
It completely changes how you see things. It explains your own decision fatigue, and it reveals the invisible, totally irrational forces driving your customers' behavior.
Yeah, so to understand how choice becomes a trap, I think we first need to look at the anatomy of a decision. When we think of ourselves as rational actors, we assume there's this pristine logical sequence we follow.
Right, like an algorithm or something.
Exactly. First, you figure out your goals. Second, you evaluate the importance of those goals. Third, you array your options. Fourth, you evaluate the likelihood of each option meeting your goals. Fifth, you pick the winner. And then finally, you use the consequences of that choice to, modify your future goals.
It sounds so perfect.
It sounds pristine.
It does. And, if we were silicon-based computers, that algorithm would run flawlessly every single time. But we are biological creatures. We're operating with hardware that evolved on the savannah millions of years ago.
Right. We're not running the latest OS.
No, not at all. And where this entire pristine 6-step system violently breaks down is literally right at step number 1, figuring out our goals. Because to figure out what you want, you essentially have to predict how a certain choice will make you feel in the future.
Okay, so it's forecasting your own emotional state.
Exactly. Psychologists actually call this affective forecasting, and the research here is definitive. Human beings are just comically bad at predicting how our future selves will feel based on how our present selves feel right now.
We just can't imagine it.
We really can. We suffer from a severe lack of imagination when it comes to projecting our emotional states. We suffer from what's known as a projection bias.
Yeah.
Basically, we take our current physiological or emotional state and we essentially just paste it over our future self.
Oh, wow. And there is a classic study about this from the sources that perfectly illustrates just the absurdity of it. the grocery shopping study.
Yes, I love this one.
It's so good. So the researchers looked at how people behave when they're asked to buy groceries for the future versus buying groceries for right now.
It's incredibly revealing, right?
Yeah.
So they took two groups of people. The first group was asked to imagine doing their grocery shopping day by day. Like they just needed to buy one snack item for that specific day.
Yeah.
And then the next day, they do it again.
Just one day at a time.
Right. But the second group, they were asked to buy 3 days worth of snacks all at once. They had to select 3 things for the upcoming days while just standing in the aisle on day 1.
And the results are completely divergent, like totally different. The people shopping day by day, making the choice in the actual moment of consumption, they tend to buy their favorite items repeatedly.
Because they know what they like.
Exactly. If you love a specific brand of pretzels, you buy the pretzels on Monday. Tuesday rolls around, you still love pretzels, so you buy them again. Wednesday, pretzels again.
Makes perfect sense.
But the people who are asked to buy 3 days worth of food at once, they suddenly behave completely differently. They select a wide variety of items. They grab the pretzels for Monday, sure, but then they grab, like, tortilla chips for Tuesday and mixed nuts for Wednesday.
Right, because they are predicting that they will crave variety. They're standing in the aisle on Monday looking at the pretzels, and their brain says, well, I'm going to eat pretzels today, so by Wednesday, I will definitely be sick of them. I'll want the mixed nuts.
Which is entirely logical if you're a computer.
But not for humans. They're projecting their current state, that anticipated feeling of being tired of a snack they're about to eat onto their future selves. But when Wednesday actually rolls around, their state resets.
They just want the pretzels.
Precisely. They just want the pretzels. They falsely predicted that their core desires would change. But in reality, when the moment of consumption arrives, they just want what they predictably like.
So they're stuck with mixed nuts they don't even want.
Yeah. Neither our predictions about how we will feel in the future, nor our memories of how we felt in the past are very accurate reflections of how we actually experience things in the present.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because if our future predictions are that fundamentally flawed, why do we ever plan anything?
That's the million-dollar question.
I mean, we sign 30-year mortgages, we get married, we lock ourselves into these rigid 5-year business plans. Is all of that just cognitive delusion? Like, if we can't project what snack we'll want next Tuesday, how can anyone confidently build a 10-year product roadmap?
Well, it's a massive vulnerability. And honestly, it's exactly why rigid long-term planning often fails spectacularly in business. It's like trying to pack a suitcase for a trip 3 months from now, but you don't know if the destination will have a blizzard or a heat wave.
You're just guessing based on the weather today.
Exactly. We assume we know what the weather will be because we look out the window today and see sunshine.
Yeah.
Think about the evolutionary biology here, right? The human brain evolved to solve immediate problems in the present environment.
Like finding food right now.
Right. Where's the food right now? Where's the predator right now? Our dopamine systems reward immediate action. The prefrontal cortex, which handles all that long-term simulation and planning, that's a relatively recent evolutionary add-on.
Like a software patch.
Exactly. A patch that is highly susceptible to being overridden by present physiological states. I mean, if you go grocery shopping while you're starving, you will buy thousands of calories of junk food because your present biology is screaming about a famine.
Which means, okay, tying this to business, if you are sending out surveys asking your customers what features they want in your software 6 months from now, you are essentially gathering bad data.
Oh, you are gathering beautifully documented fiction.
Wow. Beautifully documented fiction.
It's true. Customers will confidently tell you, oh, next quarter, I will definitely want the advanced analytics dashboard. I will want all these complex features. Because in the moment of taking the survey, they feel optimistic.
They're imagining their idealized future self.
Right. They're acting like the shoppers buying 3 days of groceries at once.
Yeah.
Predicting a desire for variety and complexity. But what happens when you spend millions of dollars building that complex dashboard and release it on a random Tuesday?
They log in, they feel tired, they don't want to learn a new system, and they just click the same 3 buttons they've always clicked.
Exactly.
They want the pretzels?
Oh, they want the pretzels. They walk right past the tortilla chips. If you build a product or a marketing campaign or a business strategy based solely on what people say they will want, you're building on a foundation of cognitive bias.
So what do you do instead?
You have to rely on observing their actual day-to-day behavior. Look at the analytics of what they consistently choose when the moment of choice is actually upon them. Track what they do, not what they promise to do.
Okay, so the breakdown happens immediately. Step one is a total minefield.
Huge minefield.
But let's say let's say we somehow get past that. Let's say we actually have a verified goal based on actual behavior. Now we move to step 3 and 4, gathering information to evaluate our options.
Right, evaluating the option.
And this is where we run into the reality of the modern environment, the sheer volume of noise.
Yeah.
We are not evaluating options in a vacuum. The average person is bombarded with thousands of pieces of persuasive information every single day.
Yeah, the advertising professor James Twitchell, he noted that we see around 3,000 advertisements today.
3,000.
3,000. And that number is likely way higher now with the proliferation of digital feeds and social media. The human brain physically cannot process 3,000 distinct pieces of persuasive information in a deeply analytical, rational way.
It would just shut down.
It requires too much glucose. It burns too much caloric energy.
So the brain has to adapt. It has to cheat.
Yes. We call them shortcuts. Psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, they spent their careers mapping these shortcuts, which they termed heuristics.
Heuristics, right.
Yeah, heuristics are basically rules of thumb. They're evolutionary survival mechanisms that allow us to sift through mountains of noise and make split-second evaluations without burning out our prefrontal cortex.
And we use them all the time.
Constantly. And most of the time, they keep us alive and functioning. But in a commercial environment, an environment designed by marketers, these heuristics make us incredibly vulnerable.
And one of the most powerful heuristics they identified is anchoring. I see this everywhere now, especially in pricing and retail.
Anchoring is huge.
The fundamental truth that anchoring exposes is that human beings do not have absolute internal price tags for things. We just don't possess a biological scale of absolute value.
No, we don't.
Like, if I show you a random piece of software or a new type of machinery or designer shirt, you don't inherently know its exact worth in the universe.
Because value is an abstract concept. Evaluating the true, objective worth of an item requires an exhausting amount of calculation.
Right, you'd have to know the cost of raw materials.
For the raw materials, the amortized cost of the labor, the shipping overhead, what a reasonable profit margin is, your brain just refuses to do that math.
It's too much work.
Way too much work. Instead, the brain operates as an engine of comparison. To figure out what something is worth, we tether our perception of value to the nearest available number, and that number becomes the anchor.
Let's break down the classic example from the research to show this, the $800 pinstripe suit.
Oh, this is a great one.
Right. So imagine you walk into an ultra high-end luxury boutique. You look at the racks, and the first suit you see is $2,000. The next one is $2,500. The one after that is $1,500.
Okay, so a very expensive store.
Very expensive. Then, tucked in the back, you find an $800 pinstripe suit. In that specific context, your brain registers that $800 suit as an absolute steal. It feels like a fantastic bargain.
You experience a literal dopamine hit because you feel like you've hacked the system. You found a hidden gem.
Exactly. But take that exact same $800 pinstripe suit, the exact same wool, the exact same stitching, and move it to a totally different environment.
Right, strip away the context.
You walk into a mid-tier department store, you see a rack of suits for $300, another rack for $450, a premium section where things cap out at $500, and then, standing alone, is that $800 suit.
It changes everything.
Suddenly, your brain processes that exact same item as an outrageous, unjustifiable extravagance. It feels like a ripoff, even though nothing about the suit changed and your bank account didn't change.
What's fascinating here is that the only thing that changed was the context. The surrounding numbers rewired your brain's perception of value, because we evaluate everything relative to the baseline that is presented to us. Our brains are incredibly lazy that way.
But wait, I have to ask. I get that a decoy price works in a physical store where you are like physically trapped in that environment.
Sure.
But if I'm a consumer today and I have a smartphone in my pocket, I can just open a new tab and price compare against the entire global market. Does anchoring actually survive the internet?
That is a brilliant question.
If I see a sauce product for $100 a month, I can instantly find 10 competitors. Doesn't access to perfect information neutralize the anchor?
You would think the answer is yes.
Yeah.
But behavioral economics shows us that the anchor sets the emotional baseline before the rational search even begins.
No, really?
Yeah. Even if you open a tab to price compare, the first number you saw still frames the negotiation in your own head. Think about how Apple prices its products.
Okay, Apple is famous for this.
Exactly. When Steve Jobs introduced the original iPad, he stood on stage and said, "What should we price this at?" The pundits say we should price it at under $1,000. And a giant $999 appeared on the screen behind him.
I remember that presentation.
He left it there for a while. He anchored the entire global audience to $1,000. Then he said, "I am thrilled to announce we are pricing it not at $999, but at $499. And that $999 literally shattered on screen, replaced by $499.
And the crowd went wild.
People cheered.
Yeah.
Now, $499 was still expensive for a device no one had ever even used before, but because he anchored them at $1,000, it felt like a miraculous discount. Even if you went home and Googled other tablets, your emotional baseline was already manipulated.
So if you are an entrepreneur or a salesperson or a marketer, you have to realize that you are never just selling a product. You are constructing the context in which that product is evaluated.
Absolutely. You see this heavily in software pricing models today. Like, if you release a software product for $99 a month, and it's the only option on your pricing page, your customer has no anchor.
They might just look at it and say, $99 feels steep.
Exactly. But if you introduce an enterprise tier for $499 a month and you place it right next to your $99 offer, the psychology completely shifts.
Even if nobody buys the enterprise tier.
Very few people might buy it. In fact, you might not even care if anyone buys it. Its primary function isn't to generate revenue directly. Its function is to serve as a massive psychological anchor.
Wow, so suddenly the $99 tier looks completely reasonable.
It looks like the smart economical choice. You have framed how your core offer is perceived without changing a single feature of the core offer itself.
It's the Williams-Sonoma bread maker story all over again.
Yes, exactly.
When they introduced their first home bread maker for around $275, nobody bought it. It was this weird new appliance. People had no context for it.
They didn't know what a bread maker should cost.
Right. So they brought in a market research firm, and the firm didn't tell them to lower the price. They told them to introduce a bigger, slightly better bread maker for over $400.
A decoy.
A decoy. So they did. And suddenly, sales of the $275 model went through the roof, because before the decoy, the choice was buy a weird bread maker or buy nothing.
But after the decoy.
After the decoy, the choice became, well, I'm not crazy enough to spend $400 on a bread maker, but the $275 one seems like a prudent middle ground. You are really just selling the context.
Exactly. And this leads us to an even deeper layer of how our brains are manipulated. Because context isn't just created by numbers and decoy prices. Context is profoundly shaped by language.
The actual words we use.
Yes. The actual vocabulary we use to present a choice hijacks our emotional baselines before we can even process the math.
Which brings us to Kahneman and Tversky's monumental work, prospect theory. This is the stuff that won Kahneman the Nobel Prize in economics, right?
It is. Prospect theory is arguably the most important concept in behavioral economics. It completely revolutionized how we understand human decision-making.
How so?
Well, at its core, prospect theory proves that human beings do not evaluate outcomes in absolute terms of final wealth or pure logic. We evaluate outcomes strictly as gains or losses relative to a specific baseline.
Okay, gains or losses.
Right. And here's the crucial mechanism. Losses hurt astronomically more than gains feel good.
Loss aversion.
Yes, loss aversion. From an evolutionary standpoint, this makes perfect sense. If you are a hunter-gatherer, acquiring an extra day's worth of food is a gain. It feels good. It's a bonus.
But losing a day's worth of food?
Losing a day's worth of food might mean starvation. It's a threat to your very existence. So our neurobiology evolved to be hypersensitive to losses.
It's literally hardwired.
It is. The amygdala, the fear center of the brain, lights up much more intensely when we face a potential loss than the reward centers do when we face a potential gain of the exact same magnitude.
So, like, finding $50 feels good, but losing $50 ruins your day.
The psychological pain of losing $50 is roughly twice as intense as the joy of finding $50.
And because of that biological wiring, whoever controls the language of the offer controls the baseline. And whoever controls the baseline dictates whether the customer feels the joy of a gain or the intense, disproportionate pain of a loss.
Let's look at the scenario from the research that illustrates this perfectly. The tale of the two gas stations.
This is a great one.
Imagine you're driving down the road and you come to a busy intersection. There's a gas station on opposite corners, Station A and Station B.
Okay.
Now, the underlying financial reality, the absolute math at both of these stations, is utterly identical. If you pay with physical cash, gas is $1.45 a gallon. If you pay with a credit card, gas is $1.55 a gallon.
So the math is exactly the same at both.
The math is the same, but
Yeah.
the language they use on their signage is different.
Station A has a huge bright sign that says, discount for paying cash. Cash, $1.45, credit $1.55.
Right.
But Station B takes a totally different approach. They have a sign that says, surcharge for using credit. Cash, $1.45. Credit, $1.55.
Same numbers, different words.
Right. If I pull up to either station and hand the attendant a $20 bill, I pay $1.45. If I swipe my card, I pay $1.55. The economic impact on my wallet is exactly the same, but my emotional reaction is wildly different.
How do you feel at Station A?
Well, at Station A with the discount sign, the semantic baseline price is set at $1.55. The language frames the higher price as a normal state of the world. Therefore, if I use cash, I feel like I'm being rewarded. I'm beating the system. It's a gain.
Exactly. But at Station B, with the surcharge sign, the linguistic baseline is set at the cash price of $1.45. That becomes the anchor.
So if I use my credit card there,
If you use your credit card there, the language frames the extra 10 cents as a penalty. You are being punished for convenience. It's a loss.
and because of loss aversion.
Because of loss aversion, people will be absolutely infuriated at Station B and completely happy at Station A, even though the math is identical.
I struggle with this, though. Here's where it gets really interesting. Are you saying we never engage our rational brain? Like, if I drive past those two gas stations every single day on my way to work, eventually my prefrontal cortex is going to wake up and realize, hey, I'm paying $1.55 either way.
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
Right. Do we really not see through the semantic trickery? Are we truly that purely reactionary?
Well, we do have a rational brain, but System 1, the fast, automatic, emotional part of the brain, it processes language and triggers emotion milliseconds before. System 2, the slow, calculating, rational part of the brain, can even do the math.
Wow, so the emotion hits first.
Exactly. By the time you realize the math is the same, the emotional sting of the word surcharge has already released stress hormones. You already feel nickel and dimed. You already feel defensive.
So the damage is done.
The damage is done. You might rationally know the prices are identical, but you will still prefer Station A because it doesn't insult your psychological baseline. We see this play out constantly in modern business strategies, particularly in how airlines operate.
Oh, airlines. Airlines are the absolute masters of manipulating baselines.
They really are.
Yeah.
Think about the invention of basic economy.
Ugh, basic economy.
Right. 10 years ago, you bought a ticket, and it included a carry-on bag and a seat assignment. That was the baseline. Then airlines wanted to increase revenue.
Naturally.
If they had simply instituted a $20 penalty fee for bringing a bag, passengers would have revolted. It would have been a massive, highly visible loss from the established baseline.
It's the surcharge for using credit sign, but in the sky?
Exactly. So what did they do? They used language to change the baseline. They introduced basic economy. They explicitly framed this as a new, stripped-down, ultra-discounted baseline.
Oh, I see where this is going.
By doing that, the standard ticket, which just included the bag and the seat you used to get anyway, was reframed as an upgrade. You aren't paying a penalty to bring your bag. You are choosing to purchase a premium package.
Wow. They moved the baseline down, so returning to your previous state feels like a choice rather than a punishment.
It completely neutralizes the loss aversion because you feel like you are opting into a feature rather than being penalized for existing.
That is devious. But if you run a subscription business, the application of this is massive. Like, never charge a late fee for missing a payment. A late fee is a surcharge. It triggers the amygdala. It makes the customer angry and likely to churn.
Very likely to churn.
Instead, set your baseline price slightly higher and offer an early payment discount. If they miss the window, they just lose the discount. Mathematically, it is the exact same amount of money changing hands.
But psychologically, you have shifted them from experiencing a painful penalty to merely missing out on a bonus.
Whoever controls the baseline controls the emotion. If you want to influence behavior, you must frame the desired action as a gain, or at least frame the alternative as a failure to secure a gain, rather than inflicting a direct loss.
Exactly.
So if our brains are so easily tricked by context, anchoring, and linguistic framing, how do we ever survive making choices in the modern world?
That's tough.
If every marketer knows how to hack our loss aversion, how do we defend ourselves? Well, it turns out humanity essentially split into two entirely different defensive strategies when faced with a decision. And this brings us to the work of the Nobel Prize-winning economist and psychologist Herbert Simon.
Right. Back in the 1950s, Simon realized that the classical economic models of human behavior were just wrong. Classical economics assumed that humans were rational actors with infinite cognitive capacity, always calculating the absolute best possible outcome.
Always making the perfect choice.
Right. But Simon said, no, humans have bounded rationality. We have limited time, limited brain power, and limited information. Because of these limits, Simon observed that people generally fall into two distinct behavioral camps when trying to navigate choices: maximizers and satisficers.
Okay, let's start with the maximizer. We all know a maximizer. Hell, many of us are maximizers.
Definitely.
A maximizer is a person who refuses to settle for anything less than the absolute best. They believe that out there, somewhere in the universe, is the perfect option, and it is their moral or intellectual duty to find it.
But there is a fatal flaw in the maximizer's logic. To logically guarantee that you have found the absolute best option, what do you have to do?
You have to evaluate every single possible alternative, which is mathematically impossible.
It is entirely impossible, especially in an era of globalized internet commerce. But the maximizer tries anyway. They are the ones who spend 4 hours reading hundreds of Amazon reviews for, like, a $12 spatula, terrified of making a suboptimal choice.
Just paralyzed by the spatula options. Exactly. And because they can never evaluate every option, they live in a state of perpetual doubt and regret. Contrast this with the other camp, the satisficer.
Satisficer. It's a clunky word, a combination of satisfy and suffice. What is a satisficer doing differently?
Satisficer is someone who approaches a decision by first establishing clear, predefined standards for what they want. They ask, what are my criteria? Once those criteria are set, they begin their search.
Oh, okay.
And here's the defining characteristic. The absolute moment they encounter an option that meets those standards, they stop searching. They execute the choice.
They just stop.
They just stop. They do not care if there might be a marginally better option 3 stores down or 10 clicks away, because the option they found is good enough based on their own criteria.
Let's bring this to life with the sweater shopping story from the sources, because this perfectly encapsulates the psychological torment of the maximizer versus the efficiency of the satisficer.
I love this story.
It's so relatable. Imagine you need a new sweater for an event. You have your criteria. You want it to be dark blue, made of soft wool, fit well, and cost under $100.
Clear standards.
Very clear. You go out shopping. You walk into the first department store, browse for about 20 minutes, and you find it. The color is striking, the wool is super soft, the fit is incredibly flattering, and the price tag says $89. It hits every single one of your criteria perfectly.
Okay, so if you are a satisficer, the story ends right there.
Yeah.
You take the sweater to the register, you buy it, you go home, you wear it to the event, you look great, and you reclaim the rest of your Saturday to do things you actually enjoy.
Sounds peaceful. But if you are a maximizer,
Oh boy.
the maximizer finds that exact same perfect $89 sweater. But right as they are walking to the register, a thought creeps into their head. Wait, what about that boutique 3 blocks away? They are having a sale. What if they have a similar sweater for $79? Or what if they have one that's $89, but the wool is a tiny bit softer?
You just can't let it go.
The maximizer cannot tolerate the possibility that a better option exists unseen. So what do? They take the perfect sweater, they walk back to the display table, and they hide it under a pile of extra large, hideous orange sweaters so nobody else can buy it.
That's so true.
And then they leave the store to go check the other boutique.
And the tragedy begins. They spend another 2 hours walking from store to store. Their feet start to hurt, their blood sugar drops. They look at dozens of other sweaters. Some are cheaper but scratchy. Some are softer but cost $200.
None of them are better.
None of them are better than the first one. So, exhausted and frustrated, they trudge back to the first store, dig the sweater out from its hiding place, and finally buy it.
They end up with the exact same sweater the satisficer got.
They do, but they paid a massive, invisible tax to acquire it. They paid a tax in time, a tax in physical energy, and most importantly, a tax in psychological satisfaction.
A psychological tax.
Yes, because during those extra 2 hours, the maximizer looked at features they didn't end up getting. They saw a sweater with a slightly nicer collar or a slightly cooler shade of blue, and because of the way our brains process regret, Those foregone features dilute their joy in the sweater they actually bought.
Wow. So the satisficer is thrilled with their purchase, but the maximizer is vaguely disappointed, haunted by the ghosts of unchosen alternatives.
Exactly.
I have to challenge this, though, because in our culture, particularly in business, tech, and entrepreneurship, we idolize the maximizer.
You certainly do.
Look at Steve Jobs or Elon Musk or any visionary founder. They didn't satisfice. They didn't say, yeah, this iPhone prototype is good enough, let's ship it. They demanded perfection. They obsessed over the curvature of the corners and the exact shade of the internal wiring that nobody would ever see.
Right.
So if I run a startup and I tell my team to satisfice, aren't we just going to lose to the competitor who maximizes? Doesn't satisficing just mean settling for mediocrity?
This is the most common and, frankly, most dangerous misconception about Herbert Simon's theory. Good enough does not mean poor quality. It does not mean settling for a crappy, mediocre product.
It doesn't.
Not at all. You can be a satisficer with exceptionally, ruthlessly high standards. The difference between a maximizer and a satisficer isn't the height of the standard. The difference is the stopping rule.
The stopping rule, explain that.
Let's use hiring as an example, because this is where startups often kill themselves. Let's say your standard for a new lead engineer is incredibly high. They must have a PhD in computer science, 10 years of specific machine learning experience, a proven track record of managing teams of 20 people, and they must pass a rigorous cultural fit interview.
That is a very high standard.
Elite standard. Now, a maximizer will put out the job description, receive 500 resumes, and even if the very first person in the interview hits every single one of those elite criteria perfectly, the maximizer will say, they are amazing, but we need to interview the other 499 people, just to make sure there isn't someone out there who is marginally better.
They hold the role open for 6 months searching for a unicorn.
Exactly. While the product roadmap stalls and the team burns out. A satisficer, on the other hand, sets the exact same elite criteria. But the moment that first candidate walks through the door and demonstrably meets the high standard, the satisficer stops searching.
They just hire them.
They hire the person and they get back to building the company. Simon's brilliant insight was that when you factor in the massive invisible costs of the search, the time, the energy, the money, the anguish, the lost productivity of a 6-month hiring freeze satisficing is actually the ultimate maximizing strategy.
That reframes everything.
Spending 3 months to find a software vendor who is 2% better than the one you found on day one is a net loss for your business.
Satisficing is the true maximizing because you are properly valuing your own time and cognitive bandwidth as finite resources. The cost of the search has to be factored into the value of the outcome.
Yes. And the profound problem we face today is that the modern environment is actively hostile to satisficing.
Because of the internet.
Exactly. When humanity lived in small villages, maximizing wasn't that dangerous. If you needed a tool, the blacksmith had 3 options. You evaluated all 3, picked the best one, and you were done.
It was naturally contained.
But today, the internet has resulted in an explosion of choices.
Yeah.
You have 10,000 options for every software, every supplier, every strategy, every potential romantic partner on a dating app.
It's overwhelming.
This sheer volume of visible alternatives can force natural satisficers to become miserable maximizers. The options are so accessible, so in our faces, that we feel negligent if we don't evaluate them all.
If the options are just a click away, the psychological barrier to searching is basically gone. Which means the only defense is internal discipline.
That's the only way.
As a leader or an entrepreneur, striving for the absolute best in every single minor decision is a form of self-sabotage. You have to define your standard for success on a given task, and the absolute moment an option hits it, you execute. As the military saying goes, a good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan executed next week. You have to train yourself to stop searching and start doing.
Which leads directly to the final and perhaps most existential concept from the research. What happens to us when we fail to satisfy? What happens when we allow the overwhelming flood of options to just wash over us?
What happens?
We lose something fundamental to our humanity. We lose our autonomy. We degrade from being active, intentional decision makers to becoming passive selectors.
Oh, this is the critical distinction between a chooser and a picker. And it's a terrifying distinction once you recognize it in your own life. Let's define what a chooser is first. A chooser is someone who retains agency. When a chooser faces a decision, they pause. They take the time to reflect on what the decision actually means.
They ask big questions.
Right. They ask, what are the long-term consequences of this? How does this choice reflect my core identity and my values? And crucially, a chooser has the cognitive power to look at all the options presented to them by the world and say, you know what? None of these options actually serve my goals. I am going to forge a new path. I'm going to create a new option.
A chooser is the author of their own life. They are proactive. But a picker is very different. A picker is someone who has been beaten down by decision fatigue. The psychologist Barry Schwartz compares the modern experience of choice to watching a fast-paced music video.
A music video.
Yeah. The images, the options, the demands for decisions are rushing past us so quickly that we lose the ability to reflect. A picker doesn't have the cognitive bandwidth to evaluate meaning or identity. All a picker can do is reach out, grab something blindly from the blur of options rushing past, and just hope for the best.
It's the difference between carefully designing a nutritional plan that fuels your specific biological needs, which is a choice, versus standing in the cereal aisle, staring at 85 different boxes of sugary flakes, feeling your brain shut down from the sheer overwhelm, and just grabbing the box with the brightest colors so you can escape the store.
Exactly. One is a conscious choice, the other is a desperate pick.
And what's truly tragic here is that the proliferation of choice in our lives literally robs us of the opportunity to decide for ourselves just how important any given decision actually is.
It forces us to treat everything as urgent.
When every single minor detail of modern life requires a complex evaluation, from the exact percentage of fat in your milk, to the intricate terms of service on a new app, to the complex deductibles on your health insurance, your prefrontal cortex simply runs out of fuel.
You experience profound ego depletion. You lose the bandwidth to care.
And when you lose the bandwidth to care, you stop choosing and you start picking. A life made up of blind picks is a life that feels entirely out of your control, even though you technically consented to all those decisions.
So if you are building an experience for other people, whether you're designing a product interface, structuring a sales pitch, or managing a team, you have to protect their cognitive bandwidth, like your life depends on it.
Because your conversion rate certainly does.
It absolutely does. Don't give your customers 50 pricing tiers and 100 customizable add-ons thinking you are giving them freedom. You are turning them into overwhelmed pickers. And what does a picker do when the decision gets too hard?
They abandon the cart entirely.
They bounce. The cognitive friction is too high. You have to curate the options. Give them 3 meaningful, distinct choices. Allow them to feel like confident choosers.
Curation is one of the most valuable services a business can provide today. Look at Costco. A typical supermarket has, what, 40,000 unique items?
Something like that, yeah.
Costco has maybe 4,000? By radically restricting choice, Costco removes the cognitive burden from the shopper. They do the satisficing for you. And as a result, people buy massive quantities of goods with extreme confidence.
It's brilliant. And on a personal level, you must do the same for yourself. You have to create rules and routines that eliminate choices on trivial matters. Steve Jobs wore the same black turtleneck every day, not because he lacked fashion sense, and Barack Obama only wore gray or blue suits, not because he was boring.
They did it to save brain power.
They did it because they were ruthlessly defending their cognitive bandwidth. Every choice you automate in the morning is a unit of chooser energy you preserve for a decision that actually moves the needle later in the day.
That is so powerful. So if we pull back and synthesize everything we've explored today, from our biological inability to accurately predict our future desires, to the invisible traps of anchoring and linguistic framing, to the exhausting, joy-stealing curse of the maximizer, and the loss of our autonomy when decision fatigue turns us into passive pickers, if we tie all of this together, what is the core insight?
The ultimate lesson, the soul of this entire chapter of research, boils down to a profound shift in perspective. How we choose is far more important than what we choose.
How we choose is far more important than what we choose.
Yes. We spend our entire lives agonizing over the specific product, the specific job offer, the specific marketing strategy, the specific sweater. But in reality, the objective differences between these options are often microscopic. A dark blue sweater is a dark blue sweater. It is the process of choosing the endless searching, the falling victim to emotional framing, the refusal to satisfy that generates our misery. By recognizing our predictable irrationalities, by understanding that our brains will always overvalue a perceived loss and grab onto the nearest anchor, we can start to defend ourselves.
We can take control back.
Exactly. By intentionally adopting the stopping rules of a satisficer, We can reclaim our autonomy. You do not need the absolute best to succeed in business or in life. You need clear standards, fiercely protected cognitive bandwidth, and the wisdom to know when to stop searching and start acting.
It is incredibly freeing to realize that you do not have to carry the burden of finding perfection. True freedom isn't found in having a million options. True freedom is having the discipline to look at a good option and say, this meets my standards and I am done looking.
Hear, hear.
It goes right back to that idea of packing the suitcase. You can spend your entire life paralyzed in the bedroom, staring at the empty suitcase, trying to perfectly predict every possible weather pattern the universe might throw at you. Or you can pack a good jacket, a solid pair of shoes, except that you might be a little cold one night, and actually go on the trip.
Go on the trips.
Exactly. Well, now that you know the hidden mechanics of making a choice, you might think you are finally equipped to navigate the world, design the perfect life, and get exactly what you've always desired. But what happens when getting exactly what you want, against all odds, still leaves you feeling utterly empty? Join us on the next deep dive as we explore the dark side of getting everything you asked for.
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.